Good morning. I maybe flying solo a little bit today. I figured why not get out, answer a couple of some start sit questions, go over some of the games today. We got one starting here in about 20 minutes. I I miss my friends and my brothers to join me, but maybe you will join me as we go through week 5 of the NFL fantasy season. Well, never really done a solo show before, but I figured, you know what? After Thursday's Reddit AMA, where had I don't know 40,000 people viewing, is what it said at times, and a couple hundred questions to rattle through. What is another couple hours, or maybe an hour? Who knows? I don't have anybody to ask questions to, so pretty much for the most part, going to be answering all the questions that I had come up with for the week on both sides of the football. If you have questions, you have any start sits, and you want to bounce them around, shoot them into the comments. Obviously, go over to the YouTube channel. That'll be easier from what I understand. Again, I really don't know. I'm just kind of along for the ride. Jorge and company usually take control. They tell me what to do. And they're little puppet, and they just make me dance and say dance monkey. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to start dancing by, well, number one, discussing some of the obvious bye weeks that are going to impact this week. There's some big teams, obviously. A lot of mine in Detroit. The Chargers, not so much. The Eagles, of course, and then Tennessee. Nobody has anything really to worry about. But the first game on the slate, well, besides the game that's it's going to start here in about, like I said, was that 10 minutes? Jets and Minnesota Vikings. If you have any start sit questions from this game, you waited too long, and most likely you've already made that decision. But we know we're starting Brees Hall. Do we? Yeah, we do. Aaron Jones for sure. Justin Jefferson for sure. The question a lot of people may have is the old Sam Darnold revenge game and what that could mean this week. Personally, I just think that Minnesota's defense under Brian Flores has been too good for me to trust another. I mean, not Brian Flores, but the Jets defense with Sauce to slow down Jefferson to an extent. I think it's going to be a game on the ground. It's a 40.5 point total. Minnesota is favored at home by 2.5. So I wouldn't be shocked to see this game be more on the ground. Obviously, I would let Darnold really wants to get some revenge. I don't know if I'm comfortable starting him or Rodgers. I think both I have around QB 18, QB 20. So super flex leagues, you're starting them, but single quarterback, no. The biggest question I think many people will have is what to do with Braylon Allen as far as a flex play. With four teams on the bye, obviously we're forced into some situations we don't necessarily love, but he's averaging nearly 11 touches a game, 60 yards. Minnesota's run defense is tough. So will you have better options? Sure. But I think the explosive output is really going to be there on display. And I like what I've seen as far as the usage for both backs. And so in a pinch, Braylon Allen will be there. Maybe we'll have some questions about putting Allen over some other notable names. Start with the first one, though. Jeremiah Dawson. So good morning, Jeremiah. It's full point PPR, Jerry Jeudy or Dontavian Wicks. Well, with all the information coming out of Green Bay right now, obviously it looks like they're going to be short a couple wide receivers. I have Dontavian Wicks pretty high up. We saw last week that really with heavy usage, he was heavily targeted. I think that Jerry Jeudy has been, I think he's been the most consistent receiver in Cleveland. Consistently okay is probably the fair way to say that. Cooper had the blow up week, but in reality, I like Jerry Jeudy for I think he may present actually a more stable floor, as boring as that may sound, but not too far removed. Wicks, if he had Dobbs there or if Watson was in the lineup, I think both of their floors are comparable. But in this situation, with just a target that should funnel Wicks's direction, I would leave Dontavian Wicks for sure. And good morning, Jorge. How are you, buddy? I know this is weird, just me doing this, and hopefully I can rattle through these for people and whatnot. Hope you're doing well. And gosh, so happy for you, buddy. If anybody doesn't know, Jorge is away this week, but he will be back. Oh man, I don't know. Could be 2 weeks, could be 3 weeks. But if you have any questions for Jorge at any time, I'm sure he's always going to be on his phone at Jorge B. Edwards, and we'll be more than happy to, you know, entertain all of your questions and IDP wise, etc. But love you, miss you, and if you have any start sit questions, Jorge, let me know. I'd be happy to, you know, give you as good advice as I can come up with. But going back to the Jets game, as I said, Braylon Allen, possible flex there. Garrett Wilson obviously is the biggest enigma that people don't really know what to do. The upside of blow up week is always there. I think that we're just kind of waiting for that to happen. They keep saying they scheme around them, and it just sounds like talk. I know that it's easier to say that, not piss off Garrett Wilson by telling him to relax and that they're scheming around him and that they're still winning ball games. Well, kind of. Um, Without him being as heavily involved as he wants to be. But again, the matchup against Minnesota, uh, a little bit of a tougher one than I love to start him, but I'm not taking him out of my lineup. And I think the only other true option is Tyler Conklin as far as tight end, because the other pass catchers in New York, Alan Lazard, sure, in deeper flex leagues, he's obviously gotten the attention of Aaron Rodgers. I I'm comfortable with Conklin. I think we've seen the looks go his direction a little bit more over the last couple weeks now. Tight end landscape as a whole is garbage. So yeah, I've been a fan of Conklin going into the season. So I'm happy to recommend. And this will be the last week, maybe, where we actually don't have to worry about TJ Hawkinson being out, and he may enter. Slow play into his ramp up speed. I would say maybe in a couple weeks he will start being one of those must plays. I got a ton of questions about Hawkinson going forward on the Reddit thread. So it sounds like a lot of people, myself included, were waiting. And right on cue, there's that Jeremiah. Yeah, can't wait for Hawkinson to get back either. I don't really worry about him immediately getting considerable looks. I think really it's Jefferson, Addison, and him, and the running game has still been so solid that I think they can move the chains. I don't think this is a unique Sam Darnold 4 game experiment where he just goes to the wayside. So TJ Hawkinson going forward, of course, is someone that if you can grab him, if someone's willing to give up. I doubt it at this point. If fantasy managers have waited 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks to hold them in their bench or their IR, his value is probably higher than most people want to pay. On the IDP side of things, CJ Mosley is inactive. Jamie and Sherwood will have another week. I don't personally love Will McDonald. Will McDonald has been a great story with Jermaine Johnson out, but the Minnesota Vikings offensive line is just very, very difficult matchup. I don't love it. I don't like any pass rushers against this Minnesota offensive line as a whole. And so I moved him down from around 24 to about he's outside of my my DL3 right now, or at the very bottom of that. So deep leagues, fine, but he's not one of my recommended starts. Both the safeties in New York, they play a ton in the box. So either or, Tony Adams, Chuck Clark. I think that if you have one or the other, it wouldn't make for a bad play, especially considering I think this game's going to be on the ground more so than through the air. I could see one, if not both of the safeties being viable. I think it's probably I lean Tony Adams this week, but I could make a case for both. On the other side of the ball in Minnesota, it's they run the three safety sets a lot. Josh Metellus is the one that I would recommend. Our friend Ivan Pace is returning to the lineup. It means nothing other than I like seeing him back. So it's Blake Cashman, but Ivan Pace will come in limited snaps. If you got a tackle per snap bonus, Ivan Pace would be a stud. I mean, in limited snaps, he's been productive, but he doesn't see enough. Quincy Williams is a start. And then Blake Cashman with Ivan Pace in limited snaps, seeing the green with the green dot will be an LB2. And then the pass rushers for Minnesota. Minnesota's pass rush has been really, really good. You know, the loss immediately of Danielle Hunter was important, but then we've seen both Van Ginkel and Jonathan Grenard continue to evolve and get better in tandem. And so one, if not both, I mean, they're both DL2, DL3s for me this week, but one, if not both of them, will get a sack this week. Joe, good morning. Joe wants to know in the full point PPR, Tucker Kraft or Trey McBride at tight end. Great show. Thank you. The news that came out is that Trey McBride suffered a rib injury yesterday and immediately not downgraded to doubtful, but they're really questioning his likelihood to play. And with that being said, I would have leaned McBride over Kraft, but not knowing and having to make a decision, I'm going to probably lean Tucker Kraft. And I don't think it's that far removed one from the other anyway. I think Tucker Kraft is still within earshot of McBride, even if McBride was playing, but playing it safe. If news comes out between now and 1 o'clock Eastern, obviously that could change things. But for right now, monitor the McBride situation, pivot to Kraft or stay with Kraft just to keep it simple for yourself. The next game, Carolina Panthers, Chicago Bears. Again, I think the revenge narrative idea is probably overblown in reality, but it is DJ Moore's return to Carolina, or Carolina is going to see DJ Moore, however you want to look at that. The injury side of things, Josie Jewell is out, Shaq Thompson's out, which does leave a pretty big hole in the middle for Carolina. The question then you would have is, will this be a DeAndre Swift follow-up game? If you're a betting man and you like to, live dangerously, yeah, all signs say go. The likelihood that Carolina's defense is in a situation that they are able to just completely stifle the running game is limited. I mean, Carolina's allowed the second most points on the season to opposing running backs, 6 touchdowns on the season. They even, that's without really giving up much in the way of passing work, which we know DeAndre Swift can do. So I think DeAndre Swift, God, I guess when I'm by myself, I can say, yeah, DeAndre Swift's not a bad play, but we saw that last week. This would be the, quote unquote extended look for Roshan. And then what happens? DeAndre Swift has the best game he's had in quite some time. So, you know how that is. Good morning to you, Mr. Scampers. If you would like to keep me company for the show, obviously I appreciate everybody here with me. And I'm glad we separated from England. Their time sucks. It does. Show them we're going to wake up, normal hours. I'm 8:30. I don't mind it because selfish me wants football 24/7, and I like waking up to see it. But then here I am now, and I can't really even watch it. So maybe I can rattle through these, and hopefully, you know what? Maybe it's a game I don't even really want to watch in the first place. Maybe it'll be that boring ground game that doesn't get started, and nothing happens. Hopefully, it's the Sam Darnold beat up on the Jets and show them what they're missing out on. But I don't believe that's going to be the case. So some of the other narratives in this game, Andy Dalton, who has been a revelation for many of the players on Carolina, as well as many fantasy teams. This Chicago secondary is tough. I will say I'm not the biggest fan of this matchup necessarily. I think on the other side of the ball, Caleb Williams does have an ideal matchup. The question is who will take better gain of their situation? Andy Dalton against a tough Chicago secondary, Caleb against an ideal secondary and defense as a whole. I think Caleb has shown flashes at times, ultimately is underwhelmed, but I'm pretty much fading both in one QB leagues. I'm definitely out. And yeah, 625 is too early. Tilting by before you even get a cup of coffee in you, and you didn't start, I don't know, Jalen Naylor or something stupid that people are going to go, why didn't I? And there was never any reason to do so before 9 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 6 o'clock, whatever time zone you're in. Yeah, I get that feeling. Good morning to you, Justin. Any questions you may have, obviously, shoot them out. Hopefully, nobody has any start sets because their teams are so loaded. They know exactly what they're going to do, and they don't. But then we have situations like this. And yeah, he's starting Wicks. I'm right there with you. Who would you spite bench? Tyreek or Ayuk? One of them must play. God, probably I'd play Ayuk and hate it. That's the game. I'm glad that the Miami game is not the morning game, because that's when you talk about being on tilt. That's when you have situations like this where you sit Tyreek just because he should, see Christian Gonzalez. Don't see anything in that offense that reminds me of a positive, viable offense right now. And Ayuk hasn't exactly, with all the weapons around, it's a slow ramp up. So maybe this is the week that he actually does get going. And Arizona, I can't think of a much better matchup as far as goes. I mean, they're middle of the pack, shockingly, against wide receivers, but not too far removed from being in that upper echelon as far as teams to go against. And a lot of that has to do with the fact they haven't really allowed too many passing touchdowns. I mean, 4 on the season is fine, but I think we're expecting them to be among the league leaders at this point already when it comes to the defense. So Ayuk there for me. The situation in Carolina that we were talking about, as a fact of just how much the Andy Dalton effect has benefited everybody. Well, a person who's probably benefited the most is Chuba Hubbard. I mean, if you look over the past 2 weeks now, he's the RB4. He's RB15 on the season. A lot of questions come up with in my head as far as, what do we do with Jonathan Brooks? Is this just an immediate bonus for Jonathan Brooks managers like myself and many others that have him, that are waiting and thinking, okay, when he comes in, immediately he'll get the lion's share. The Andy Dalton led offense has shown, that they're capable of scoring. The offensive line is playing better. Or is this going to be a committee type scenario? I guess we have to play the wait and see, but we don't have to wait and see this week. Chuba, Bears defense a little, tough. Use more so against the pass than against the rush. But I think Hubbard is a fine RB2 at this stage. There's nothing that leads me to believe otherwise, short of the fact that I don't know anything, and that's pretty much what I've learned through 4 weeks, or through 24 years of playing, is I really don't. But that's not a good endorsement to keep you around. Having Albert in the chat that will obviously attract more people, because who doesn't want to engage with everybody that's here so far? As far as the passing game goes, I mean, Carolina, it's Deontay Johnson. I think he's going to continue to see the lion's share of the work. Obviously, Xavier Legette had a huge week last week. I think he's a trend in the right direction. Do I trust him in leagues outside of bye weeks? No. With bye weeks in deeper leagues, sure. I don't like this matchup at all. I think both corners in Chicago are capable of slowing down any perimeter receiver. Deontay moving around enough will be beneficial. So Deontay for me, nothing else. The wide receivers in Chicago, like I said, DJ Moore, revenge narrative. DJ Moore is the play I would have. And then outside of him, I just don't know if Caleb has played well enough to support more than just one wide receiver. So I think Keenan Allen can come right back, who is returning, and have a role. Roma Dunze is capable of having a huge blow-up play at any point. It's just, if you're looking for consistent ceiling, then sure, I think Dunze could be, but I wouldn't play. I would play Keenan Allen over Dunze, and I play DJ Moore over both of them. Cole Kmet, I don't know. Tight end landscape, gross. Blow up week, sure. all the weapons back. I'm out again on Cole Kmet. Maybe you have an option that could change my direction, but I don't know. And yes, all right. So, and for the record, short of the fact of I don't know anything was all the coffee I need. Yes, that is the Folgers of self-deprecation. Speaking of that, I will have a drink of my coffee. So, one, I can think of all the superlatives to talk about my bad fantasy advice and knowledge, but you know, I'll go to the IDP side because honestly, most people don't really know enough about IDP that I can say whatever I want and no one will probably question it. So that's a positive. I think that I know that's not true. Anybody following fantasy and frames, anything does have vast football knowledge, big brains on them. And defensive side, bam, Shaq Thompson, Josie Jewell. What does that mean? Trevin Wallace is actually a decent play. I think that Chicago will control, will have enough without looking too deep over the middle. I think, like I said, DeAndre Swift will get pretty heavily involved. Trevin Wallace is the only play in town, so I think we'll see a decent tackle floor there. Xavier Woods had a pretty good game last week. I don't expect a repeat performance necessarily. I have him outside of my startable options as far as defensive back goes. The Bears side of the ball, Montez Sweat did get in a full practice on Friday, which is good. But as I mentioned earlier, the Carolina pass protection has been pretty solid. So I'm not sure I really love any of the pass rushers in Chicago necessarily more than the normal spot, which I know sounds generic to say, but you get what I'm getting at. And then the players I would go, TJ Edwards is a weekly must start, and Jaquan Brisker. Jaquan Brisker against the Carolina team that I think, again, as I said, Chuba Hubbard, plenty of volume. Brisker's at the line of scrimmage enough. I like that safety upside for Brisker. I think I have him as my DB3 on the week, maybe. I guess I could find that out before I start asking the questions internally, but, I'll get there. If anybody has any questions about my rankings, obviously you can go over to Fantasy Pros and look at it, or go to fantasyandframes.com, click on the rankings tab, and look at all of our rankings for both offense and IDP. Moving on, Baltimore at Cincinnati. Baltimore's 2.5-point favorite. Cincinnati's 48.5 point total. Really not a ton of notable injuries. Sheldon Rankins is out. We're starting Lamar. We're starting Derrick Henry. We're starting Jamar Chase. I think we're starting Joe Burrow. Baltimore secondary has been pretty porous at times. I don't think there's too many situations that people, and especially in a bye week, aren't starting Joe Burrow. But if you do, let me know. The flex play question of the day, probably for Baltimore, is Justice Hill. He is averaging over 7 touches a game, nearly 60 yards a game. Obviously, most of the values come in the pass game, but Lamar's done a really nice job getting him involved in the passing game as a whole. I mean, he's got a 15% target share, which puts him above or around the league leaders at running back position. So Justice Hill's I think he was the most asked about flex play on Thursday. He seems like he's there. I don't feel great about him. I just I would love to know if you could tell me that they were going to trail in that game in the second half, I would love them a lot more. But I think they're doing a good enough job, even in positive and negative game scripts, of getting Derrick Henry enough rest, getting Justice Hill involved, and by that, middle of the tier flex play for me. T. Higgins, since returning, has been a solid target. I mean, he's had 16 targets since coming back from Burrow. It hasn't translated into fantasy production yet. I think it will at some point, of course. The arrow is trending upwards for T. Higgins right now, and it's trending upwards for most of the Cincinnati pass game, Eric All included. Eric All's tight end spot has really surpassed Mike Gesicki in my eyes. I think it's just now a matter of him, the target volume being there for a consistent basis. When you're the number 3 pass catcher, tricky, and that's number 3 as long as it's not a Yoshivas game. And on the run, the running side of things for Cincinnati, another week, another step closer, in my opinion, to Chase Brown overtaking Moss for at least significant snaps and the majority. I mean, we saw Chase last week. He had 40% of snaps, which was a season high, put up 92 total yards, 2 touchdowns. Don't expect that to replicate, but it was the first game that Zach Moss played less than 65% of snaps. So was it game script? Was it situation? It's hard to say entirely, but it's a trend in the right direction that I'm happy with. Of course, you have one scampers. God, and this is the tough one right here because it's a half point PPR. So I think that does diminish a little bit of Justice Hill's true flex upside in a matchup that I do like, as far as Baltimore having a chance to trail, just because Cincinnati's at home, even though Baltimore's favored. But on the flip side, it's Cam Akers, who's pretty much the only action in town. You're going against a Buffalo Bills defense that, against running backs, Buffalo's given up the most points, 36 points on average. And while I don't love Cam Akers because we saw him last week actually have the majority of the workload, but when did we see him not have the workload? In the red zone. And for his ultimate value, of course, we want those high profile, high value touches. I still lean Akers just because I think the workload and the volume will be there. And I think volume play in half point PPR for someone that's capable of catching passes and against an offense or a defense like Buffalo that has shown a propensity to give up some points. So I'm leaning Akers myself. That one, it is trickier. There's no doubt about that. The non-tricky thing is to look at tight end for Baltimore and just say, nope, do not do it, which is easy because we said that about Kyle Pitts before Thursday. And then now everybody's, pissed off at themselves. Will it shock me if this is the week that we see the same thing with Mark Andrews? No, not in the least. It wouldn't shock me at all. It would, just because of the snaps. And we saw it just decrease week after week. And we're getting to the point where there's 3 tight ends in a rotation now, which just doesn't lead to a lot of trust in Andrews or Likely. But I get it. Some situations you're going to have to start Andrews. And I'm sorry for that because we were definitely all wrong as far as what we thought his floor would be, which is not, non-existent at this point. IDP sides of things in this matchup. Trey Hendrickson, we're starting every week. There's no point in messing around with that. I was getting ready to say Justin Matabuke, but Matabuke and Kyle Van Noy both have been fantastic. And you have to look at this matchup where it's Baltimore, their blitz packages are still unique, not as unique as they were previously, but Van Noy's done a great job. I mean, I think he's got 6 sacks on the season right now. So, I mean, they're both good plays. I like the other side. I like Trey and Hubbard if I had to choose the two, but I don't really care for Hubbard. That seems like I'm just going round and round and round and round. But Trey Hendrickson for sure. Kyle Van Noy is tough to take out of your lineup given the production currently. At linebacker, Roquan's in. Roquan's been a little bit of a disappointment as far as like the true LB1 overall season we were hoping he was going to have without Patrick Queen, but he's still in your lineup. Logan Wilson and Jermaine Pratt, both in your lineup. Jermaine Pratt's been fantastic on the season so far, but I think both can be in your lineups. Kyle Hamilton, this is a positive. What we've seen now is for Kyle Hamilton owners, if you watch his snap share and his utility and his role, he has been outside. Like last week, they took him really out of the main slot role priority, which was huge because then he can move all around the field, which is his true benefit and the value of his athleticism and ball hawking ability, et cetera, is you want him to be able to line up in the most advantageous spot, not just in the slot, which we saw as a result. We saw IDP value right there. And then Von Bell, his box snaps that he's been playing especially against a Baltimore team as run heavy as they are. I love it. I have him in, firmly in my DB2 conversation right now. I think the stars are aligning, if you want to put it that way, for a good week for Von Bell. So if you have Von Bell, get him in. And then outside of that, that's pretty much the IDP options that I can, at least that I have written down. Let's be honest. I try to think of this off the cuff, but I cheat a little bit. And I am, man. I'm giving all Baltimore pass catchers the bonk sticker today. Yeah, 100%, almost every week. I get it. Zay is Zay, and he can have a good week, but I don't love it. I think this stays on the ground as much as they can. Keep the ball out of Burrow and company's hands. Saw a note this morning talking about their pass rush, and I don't think that was just a catchy headline for Schefter or ESPN to put out. I think it's an indicator of what we're going to see today in that matchup for the most part. And Derrick Henry, if you took him, despite all the, quote unquote, experts telling you that you can't take just a run volume running back or, rushing upside and non-pass catching situation, again, year to year, there's always the one or two that proves us wrong, that they're not going to save him for the postseason. He's going to be heavily involved, and he's going to do exactly what he's done, which is be a monster with the ball in his hand. So we go to Houston, where the aforementioned Cam Akers and the Houston Texans are going to host the Buffalo Bills. Buffalo comes into Houston as a 2.5-point favorite. It's a 49-point total. So this game, it was at least. If the lines changed, sorry, it's not a betting site. I live in Missouri, and I can't sports bet anyway, so I don't pay that close attention. The game should be exciting for both fantasy and reality. The injuries are prevalent, but there's opportunities then for others by result. Ed Oliver's out, so that helps Cam Akers. Khalil Shakir's out, that helps all other pass catchers on Buffalo. Taylor Rapp is out, that doesn't really matter. Sorry, but Joe Mixon's out, obviously Cam Akers, and then Terrell Bernard has he's logged limited practices multiple times. It's trending in the right direction, which I think is a positive, because if you have Terrell Bernard in, obviously from a IDP standpoint, he's jumping right into your lineup. From an IDP standpoint of if you have Balin Spector, he's out of your lineup now. Dorian Williams still remains in an alternate kind of a what's the right way to say that, I guess. If you have a super deep league and you trust him, that's one thing, but he's more of a 65%, 70% guy. Our must starts in here. Obviously, we're going Josh Allen, CJ Stroud, James Cook is in my must start every week now, especially in bye weeks. Nico, and I have Dalton Kincaid as one that you're obviously not going to switch out now without Shakir. He was already starting to see more targets. I think all the games that he had momentum, which seems like about every game but one, something happened. He got kneed in the head in that one game. It was a blowout another. Then he had his big week. I think that it's just been not smoke and mirrors of deflection for why Dalton Kincaid's going to have a good season, but it's been odd. So if there's an opportunity that anybody has to get Kincaid, I still think that there's a small bit of a buying window. It's closing rapidly, but I would love Kincaid going forward as high as maybe my tight end 2 or 3 rest of season. So Cam Akers, like we said, getting the start again. The lack of the red zone touches is a little concerning. Dare Gubawale did have a good week last week. Maybe it limits his upside a little bit, but I think there's still plenty of volume there for Cam Akers to be another good start. The questionable start, not questionable, but the question I have for Buffalo is, how good will Curtis Samuel be this week? He's going to reprise that slot receiver role with Khalil Shakir out. We've seen Curtis Samuel in this role before with Joe Brady, and we haven't seen it yet, but I think that this is a good week that if you're really in a pinch and there's a flex spot available, that you're looking between Curtis Samuel and insert player B, I don't hate it. I really don't. I'm starting to turn the corner this week on Samuel as being the number 2 pass catcher, because I do think it'll be Kincaid. And yeah, I know Keon Coleman's there. I'm still not in on Keon Coleman. I wasn't during the whole offseason or going into the season. He had the big game, of course, got plenty of targets. Then as Ben, as Scamper said, he's been the bonk for the most part. But yeah, interesting to watch Curtis Samuel this week. On the Houston side and pass catchers, though, Nico's the alpha. The number 2, it's right now it's been Stephon Diggs. Not even a question. But do I think it's going to split a little bit more with Tank Dell? Probably not this week. I think maybe going forward, he will start to eat in. He'll eat in more into Diggs's workload than I think he will into Nico's. And so I still like Diggs this week. Still like Nico. I'm not sold on Dalton Schultz personally. I think that we knew there was going to be a ton of mouths to feed. It's been a little concerning that there's been glimmers of hope, but it's because they've had so many injuries so far, different pieces missing, that they've had to involve enough of the snaps they've had with fewer of the people, and that just builds up Dalton Schultz's value right there. And Buffalo against the tight end spot, kind of middle of the pack, not really advantageous, so I'm not necessarily hyper focusing on Dalton Schultz. On the IDP sides of thing, though, there's a lot to dissect. Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter both, as far as our expectations, I don't think they're meeting expectations, but I think that they've shown in certain sample that they both can get to 13, 14, 15 sacks, and it wouldn't shock anybody. The question is it cannibalization sometimes? Do they focus on one side from the offensive side, or the pass protection side, to eliminate one from the game? We've seen basically both fail at the same time, both succeed at the same time. So that's kind of a product, I think, of just the pass rush as a whole. If Azeez Al-Shaair is in our lineup, I'm not shocked by that. He's probably he's the linebacker to own. Henry To'oTo'o is a name that many have in mind. I don't mind To'oTo'o. He's pretty much proven that he's capable. He's getting enough snaps that with the injuries, I think Christian Harris, I don't know when Christian Harris is supposed to even come back. If he is, I apologize for not having that right now. I don't think he's not even practicing, so I don't see anything on the horizon for him to step into that. The Jalen Petrie usage has been interesting, to say the least, because he's been used in the slot more than anything else. I liked his value much more when he was at the line of scrimmage. Buffalo hasn't been great for opposing DBs. They've been a little bit better for the slot corner. As I said, talking earlier about Curtis Samuel, if he's heavily involved, Jalen Petrie will be there with him. Petrie's a DB2 for me this week. I'm comfortable starting him just because his usage around the line of scrimmage and the slot, but it's not like a super high ceiling like I've had for him in other weeks. On the other hand, though, Houston has allowed the most points to opposing safeties. So this question gets brought up. Is it DeMar Hamlin? Or quite possibly, is this the Cole Bishop breakout game that we've kind of been waiting for? I like Bishop's usage near the line of scrimmage. I think that that's a name that, for you IDPers out there, if Cole Bishop is available as a defensive back, pay attention to this game and just see his usage. I think this could be a sign of positive things to come, especially, like I said, with some of the injuries there. So it's the IDP side of things for that game. Next matchup will be the Indianapolis Colts, the Jacksonville Jaguars. Jacksonville's 3.5 favorites and 46-point total. The Anthony Richardson news, I believe I saw earlier. I don't know if he's out fully yet, but I have him out as far as I'm concerned. I don't think he's actually going to play. Jonathan Taylor is out. Kwity Paye is out. Kenny Moore is out. Jacksonville, relatively healthy for people that haven't been placed on IR, like Foye Oluokun. And we look at the Joe Flacco game against this Jacksonville defense, and I gotta tell you, I love it. In our Kings Classic draft, I have Anthony Richardson in one league, and it's fortunate enough, which is weird to say fortunate enough, that I have Joe Flacco, and I'm starting him, and I don't feel terrible about it. I don't feel great because I don't think you want to feel great about that, but no Jonathan Taylor. Uh, Pass catching weapons are there. Flacco's shown that he can support multiple pass catchers. He can be a viable option. We know that Jacksonville is nothing short of the biggest benefit. I mean, they're the number one defense against opposing quarterbacks as far as fantasy points allowed. So it's a perfect storm of things to come. On the other side, is this the get right game for Trevor Lawrence? Right now I would ask anybody. All right, anybody in the chat, over under fantasy points for Trevor Lawrence. Right now, the over under set at 15. His season high is 14.8. An Indianapolis pass rush that probably won't get to him much. They have the linebackers to keep up. Their secondary's decent, not great, but Indianapolis does allow explosive plays. They have been beat deep at times. They're I take that back. They're allowing the fourth most points to opposing quarterbacks. I didn't realize it was that high. I thought it was middle of the road or a little bit higher, but I wouldn't start him in a one. Like I would start Flacco over Lawrence, and I'd be interested to hear what anybody else may have to do or will do. I don't think that given the bye weeks, considering really you're losing, if it's Jared Goff, Justin Herbert, maybe if you have Hurts, but I don't think your pivot would be to Trevor Lawrence. But I've been wrong. Who knows? Again, like I said, Scampers, I don't know anything. I'm just rattling on for an hour and entertaining myself, so I don't have to, hang out with my family. Kidding. Just kidding. And one of the questions that I'd have is, was the shoulder injury to Travis Etienne, was that the opening that Tank Bigsby needed, or is it a full go for Etienne when he's healthy? And I don't think it was a positive for Etienne fantasy managers going forward as far as utilization of Tank. We saw last year that there was conversation, but no one really, I think by mid-season, believed that Bigsby was going to be anything at this point. But we're 4 games in, and we've seen that I think they maybe want to limit Etienne's workload just because of the fact they would rather have 2 healthy backs or at least 1 healthy back going forward. So Etienne's still that RB2 for me, but I have him, let's see. I have him as the RB16. So, could be worse, but I think that's a fair spot to have someone like that with Bigsby potentially going to eat into some of the touches. But yeah, if T-Law doesn't hit the over, I know. I mean, 14.8 is the season high. 15 is not a hard number to reach. And he does. Bigsby looks so much better. I mean, we saw last year when he touched the ball, like it wasn't that we were, screaming from the rooftops that he looks so much better and he needs to get more touches. When he got touches, they look like, man, they need to give him fewer touches. He does not look good. And this year's changing. And we're seeing, I think that it's not going to be 50-50. We know that. I think that it's probably going to be more 60-40. But let's see. I mean, he's played around 30% of the snaps in the past 2 games with about, 10 attempts. I mean, the yards have been there, but the red zone usage is still a little bit lower. So, I mean, Etienne still has the more value, but I do like Bigsby. I mean, if something happened to Etienne, Bigsby would be a very solid RB2 with week-to-week RB1 upside, depending upon the matchup. On the other side of the ball, Indianapolis, Trey Sermon with Jonathan Taylor out, most likely is going to be like not only a DFS darling, probably for many, but I think that he's capable of that low end RB2 flex. Like I said, I think this could be a passing game with between both of these secondaries, and so Sermon might not be as heavily involved. I think the interesting name, just for myself, is will Evan Hull get involved? And he's finally quote unquote healthy. It's one of those situations where they trusted him last year when Jonathan Taylor was out. Do I think they bring Trey Sermon in just for that role, or was it a complimentary role with Evan Hull? I think Evan Hull could be just something to monitor if something happened, long term for Taylor. If this ankle injury is more of the high ankle variety than that middle area they were saying, I don't know. There's way too many fantasy doctors out there right now that I get mixed information from, and I try to use my healthcare background, and yet I don't know anything again. I feel like that's a trend for this show. Maybe I should quit doing that if I'm trying to get people to trust in the conversation. But, I trust one thing is if Joe Flacco does have the game that I expect, one of his pass catchers will obviously benefit more so than probably the other. The question is will it be Michael Pittman or will it be another Josh Downs game? And that in itself is the trickiest spot. Pittman has not done anything so far on the season to instill trust. He's the wide receiver, 55 points per game. Now, a lot of that falls on Anthony Richardson, I know. But with Josh Downs, I think they're both in that same target share. I think probably 25 to 30% target for each of them this week. Who will get the red zone looks will obviously be the biggest thing. The I would say pivot, like I would believe it would be Pittman. I would have to, just the fact that he's the bigger body. I think that he has had the more rapport. It's weird because he leads the team with 3 red zone targets, but that's also not all with Joe Flacco. So, trying to decipher exactly how it's going to unfold. But I think that both of them are benefited by Flacco over Anthony Richardson. As much as I like Richardson, Flacco is better for both the pass catchers in this game. Christian Kirk on the other side. I don't know. Was it Christian Kirk? Was it Doug Peterson? I heard that Brian Thomas Jr. hype train rolling down the I-95. I know trains don't go down highways, but I don't know what the name of the railway going through Jacksonville is. So I had to go with what I know. And Kirk's been solid, man. He's gotten the usage that I had expected. I expected Christian Kirk to be a solid floor type wide receiver 3. That's all I wanted. I didn't want, incredible. I want incredible upside, but I wasn't trying to get too carried away. I wanted to see more than, zeros on the stat sheet. And I think that's where we've gotten. So, since week 3, let's see, he has almost 30% target share. A third of the air yards are going his way. First read shares are at 37% almost. It's everything that you would want at a Christian Kirk. I think Kirk and Brian Thomas Jr., let's hope that Scampers, you and I, if we're getting that over out of Trevor Lawrence with 14.8 or 15 points, that has to be one of those two, because I don't think it's the Evan Ingram show yet. When he's supposed to return, I think he'll be, minorly involved, but it is something going forward. Maybe that's what's going to help support this offense as a whole, even more so, as someone who could move the chains, reliable pass catcher. Where that means for the tight end rest of the season, we'll have to see. I think he's probably in that tight end like 7-8 for me rest of season, but not bad given the landscape. And then Ryan, good morning. He has to start. Dontavian. It's a standard league too. Okay, so James Conner, Devin A-Chain, Dontavian Wicks. As weird as that sounds, that you're leaning Wicks, I might do the same. It's crazy to think, but Devin Achane, all of his value over the last couple weeks, which isn't much value by any means, has been entirely in the pass catching role. And if you're not getting points for the pass catching, you're going to need to score touchdowns and get massive yardage. And I don't think the massive yardage has been there, especially if Mostert's back now and we're seeing split work. James Conner against the San Francisco defense that we know how San Francisco can be. James Conner's been really solid. I mean, he's definitely like a must start for me pretty much week in and week out. I'm going to say, I'm going to go, I would put Conner in and I would have Wicks as my 2, but I don't blame you for shooting for the Dontavian Wicks upside that we saw last week and going that direction. But like I said, I would probably have, like, as much as I would want to tell you right now, yep, Wicks, I'm with you. I would still, when it came time for me to click the button, I would put Conner in my lineup. Just being truthful. IDP side of things, EJ Speed, it has been, Jorge, if you're still listening, you absolutely nailed it completely before the season started, talking about the change. Like, as the end of the season came around, it was Zaire Franklin that was really leading that team in tackles, especially solo, and it's trending in that same, and it stayed in that same direction. EJ Speed now, I want to think it's, forgive me for not having it in front of me, but I believe it's now 8 games or 9 games in a row where he's had double-digit tackles and at least 8 solo tackles. It was some crazy number that I had written in the IDP roundup going into last week, and he's continued to do so. So I've been really high on EJ Speed. I have him ranked higher than Zaire Franklin, both of which are linebackers I'm starting. Nick Cross is another Colt that I'm happy to start. And yeah, Conner, he doesn't have to share the workload. It's a game. Arizona hasn't impressed as much as many of us were hoping for completely, but the 49ers run D is tricky because they've got a good front four. They have a better front four for pass rushing than they do run defenses. But most teams don't have the ability to get up and run on San Francisco. So they're the numbers are a little suppressed, but even with that, they're allowing the 10th most points to fantasy running backs. Of that, a lot has to do with just the pass catching and rush upside, which Conner does have. They've allowed 197 yards receiving to opposing running backs, which puts him in that top 3 or 4 most. And so maybe that's the value of the upside for Conner, which doesn't help you. But I think that the chance that he's not going to have to concede goal line carries is another positive in Conner's direction. A positive in the direction of opportunities from Jacksonville is Chad Muma, who, with all the injuries across Jacksonville's linebacking core, he's stepping into a pretty heavy role, as is Ventrell Miller. Muma is the player that I think many of us like more, just because the hype going into the draft and the overall what we've seen out of him. Indianapolis is not a great matchup against linebackers, but this is also a different Indianapolis team that we've seen through the first 4 weeks that has shown that they weren't a great matchup for linebackers. So I still like Muma. The volume should be there. Josh Hines-Allen, if the amount of pass rush that he should have against a not exactly fleet of foot Joe Flacco, say that 4 times, I like his chance to get into the backfield along with Trayvon Walker there. So those are the IDP options in Jacksonville. The next game is a game I could skip altogether. It's so disappointing. For many years, it was a matchup that from a real football standpoint, even somewhat IDP, it had relevancy, and that's the Miami Dolphins going to Foxborough to take on the Patriots. Excuse me. New England's 1 point home favorite. Over under somehow 36 points, 36 and a half. I don't know how they get there, but injuries are Jalen Phillips went on the IR, nasty ACL. David Andrews, the starting center for the Patriots, is doubtful. I think he's trending out. Kyle Duggar is doubtful, out most likely. And Jabril Peppers, safety for New England, is out. So plenty of injuries across the defensive side for New England secondary, as well as the biggest loss being Jalen Phillips. I have a hard time finding upside of anybody in this game. I guess I don't have a hard time finding upside. I have a hard time finding consistent floor with the upside's there because you have names of Devin Achane, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. But that's about where it ends because unfortunately with a Snoop Huntley led offense, we don't see that upside is as clear. It's about as clear as mud, as they say. And so Devin Achane, New England's done a good job containing running backs. I want to have him in my flex just because I know he's capable of breaking any one play at any given time. But I'm tempering expectations, unfortunately. On the other side of the ball, Ramondre Stevenson, his fumbles have been an issue. Antonio Gibson's getting more work. I think the collective fantasy landscape has pretty much loved Antonio Gibson to an extent just because we want to see the pass catching opportunities, but I don't know if there'll be enough volume there. Tyreek will be shadowed by Christian Gonzalez. So to put Tyreek as a low end wide receiver 2, middle wide, around that wide receiver 15, 16, 17 spot, I don't think is crazy. I want to, you want to trust the upside and have them higher than that. I have them as wide receiver 23 right now. And I could see a couple people below him, like Christian Kirk. I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to put Christian Kirk above Tyreek Hill. And I feel gross for doing that. And when Dontavian Wicks and Tyreek Hill are back to back, that's when it's an interesting situation. Let's hope that Tyreek Hill gets traded to a different team. I know the talks have been there. Don't know if it actually matters or not, or if it will come to fruition, but one can hope. With Tyreek being shadowed by Christian Gonzalez, does this open up a Jalen Waddle bounce back? I mean, the easy answer is to say yes. Looks like Jalen Waddle will probably see a higher target volume than he has the last 2 weeks. I think it projects to 8 targets, 5 catches, 45 yards. If I was going out on a limb and putting my projections, that's what I would think the stat line is going to look like, which is just gross. So maybe the IDP side of things will be better. And I think it will be. I mean, with Jabril Peppers being out, I think Jalen Watkins is a name that I'm going to pay attention to. And in deeper leagues where I need to start 3 defensive backs, I think I'll put Watkins in. I mean, I don't love either offenses moving the ball consistently enough to support a ton of solid tackle upside, but I do think it will stay short, intermediate, around the line of scrimmage, which should benefit Jalen Watkins, who's been up there. The player I love the most is Zach Seiler. His matchup this week with David Andrews out is spectacular. I've liked Zach Seiler on and off for a few years now. He showed that last year that he'd go through stretches where he can put, rack up 5 sacks and in a 6-game sample size and do so. So yeah, Zach Seiler's a great play. Emmanuel Ogbah is a solid play as well. I think that this New England pass protection is horrible. Their PFF's 32nd graded offensive line. They lose David Andrews, which was by far their best piece. It looks like it could be multiple Miami pass rushers that could have a chance to be significant. On the other side, Keon White is just having a really good season. Really nice to see him have his little blow up, and hopefully it continues. David Long got into full practice on Friday. Don't know how much I trust the quick return, but if healthy, he's probably going to be in your lineup unless you have better options. And then Jelani Tavai, again, a lot of these guys in this bad game, maybe there's just enough sustained drives where they see the a good enough tackle volume where it's just not all garbage incompletions and bad plays. But Scamper's right. Yeah, Mostert is coming back. I think he's going to see a little bit of workload this week. And HN has struggled massively. I mean, they abandoned the run between tackles. His explosive nature is contained when they're stacking the box completely. Like, not that he doesn't have the flash and explosiveness to be able to beat the containment and be 8 men in the box, but his size and the way they want to use him, which is, they want to get that explosiveness out wide. And he's had times, and we saw that last year and even in like week 1 where they go outside and then that sets up that run up the middle where they get the safeties up and outside and the linebackers trying to go outside containment, and then he gets to the second and third level like that. But there's a lot of issues. It's really tough because, well, one, selfishly, I have a pretty heavy financial backing of both Tyreek Hill and Devin Achane this season in the league, and I don't like to see that go to waste. And this is about me. Let's be honest. We pretty much know that at this point is, how can I selfishly help myself, but yet make it seem as if I'm wanting to help others? And this is the best platform I can do. Pretend that I actually, do I care if Cam White gets a sack? Nope, I don't have him. But actually, I do. I'm kidding, Jorge. I care about everybody because I know you're shaking your head right now going, Nate, the viewers are leaving immediately when you tell them you don't care about their team. But people know I'm talking about the New England Patriots and the Miami Dolphins on a Sunday morning at 9:21 Central Time. Clearly, I'm screwed up in the head. Cleveland Browns at Washington Commanders. Jorge, this is your team. Washington is a 3.5-point favorite at home with a 43.5 point implied point total. The positive news is that Brian Robinson, despite having two did not practices, got limited practice on Friday. The reports yesterday is that they should have him and Eckler both back in the rotation this week. Jordan Hicks is out of the rotation. On Cleveland, I mean, Jedrick Wills, limited practice, not looking good. Jack Conklin, limited practice, not looking good. David Njoku, limited practice, maybe looking good, but maybe on a snap count, pitch count, whatever. The Commanders, let's be honest, they have been opposing passing teams. It's the opposite of kryptonite. Their secret sauce. Question is using the word secret sauce right before I talk about Deshaun Watson is probably bad timing. But yeah, I don't know. Even against Washington, I don't think I can trust Deshaun Watson in any capacity whatsoever. Like, if this was to be fair, if this was Jameis at quarterback right now, I would probably have Jameis as my QB 6 or 7, something crazy like that, just because the matchup is so ideal. But I can't put Watson in my top 20. So, there's worse situations to have, but I can't name too many. There's better situations, and that's Jaden Daniels, who's a must start. Thank you, Scampers. We know you care. I know. This solo thing is a little more challenging. I don't have anybody to contradict anything that I pretty much have a belief in my head. So, I guess that's kind of the point of getting your opinion across, is not having someone change your opinion last minute. But I like the back and forth. So if anybody has any varying opinions of anything I'm saying, please don't feel hesitant to call me out in the chat and question any of it, because iron sharpens iron, as we always say. But Jerome Ford is an interesting RB2 flex conversation because he's been the workhorse back in 3 of the 4 games he's played. If they get behind, which I anticipate them doing, his value improves because of the pass catching prowess. We've seen Washington give up, enough to benefit opposing running backs. Right as I'm trying to think of words, and Scamper says the hip crowd would say the opposite of kryptonite is drip tonight. And I I can say it now that it was worth, no matter how I think this would go this morning, it is now worth it because I've learned a new phrasing. And I think that if they don't say that that's the opposite right now, it will be. That should be a focus of all of ours. The momentum to get drip tonight as a slang term for something that benefits everybody. So whereas Joe Flacco is the drip tonight for Michael Pittman, Deshaun Watson's shoulder is the kryptonite to everybody else pass catching on Cleveland, which leads me to that. Amari Cooper should have another good week. I don't trust Cooper week in and week out necessarily. He's gone vanishing at times. Jerry Jeudy he's a wide receiver 3. I mean, that's pretty much what he is. Is there upside? Sure. I think against Washington there could be. I just don't trust the shoulder of Deshaun Watson as a wide receiver 3 flex, though. If you start 3 receivers and you have a flex or 2 flex spots, Jerry Jeudy is not a bad option. You're going to start Amari Cooper in that situation. David Njoku, I'm probably not going to start yet this week. There's just the opportunity for him to play 35% of snaps is there. And if that happens, then I just don't see enough volume for him to be viable. I would rather start Eric All or some of the other names we've talked about before David Njoku. Rest of season, something to pay attention to. IDP side of the ball, Myles Garrett, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, Grant Delpit. I like Jeremy Chin this week as a decent defense DB3, maybe DB2. Cleveland could be, decently run heavy if they can try to keep the ball out of Washington's hands. If that's the case, I think Jeremy Chin at the line of scrimmage is an intriguing option. Bobby Wagner, and then Frankie Louvu. So Frankie Louvu for Washington, we've said some of his IDP value is linked to him not rushing the passer and being more of an off-ball linebacker where he can have that tackle floor right there instead of being involved in the pass rush and having 3 to 4 tackles and not getting to the quarterback and tanking his week. Cleveland's pass protection is so bad that I think this could be an opportunity for scheming Frankie Louvu into multiple pass rushes that could be beneficial. So we could see a sack with 6 or 7 tackles and really have a good LB2 week with with potential to be an LB1 overall. So Washington, Cleveland game. I'm always excited to watch Jaden Daniels play, and I really want to see Terry McLaurin step up. The matchup with Martin Emerson. Sorry for skipping over the pass catchers for Washington, but it would be solid. Terry McLaurin out left. That's pretty much where Kingsbury sticks him. They make him go out to the left. That's Martin Emerson territory. That's a good matchup. That's Emerson's by far the easiest matchup of all the Cleveland secondary. But that being said, we saw Terry McLaurin in last really week and a half now, where when they move him around more, which you've seen more slot routes, he has better upside. Let him get in better matchups. So this could be a blend of the both. I think that this is another good McLaurin week because he's going to have Martin Emerson when he's lined up out wide. And then even in the slot, when they do move him around, he'll have ideal matchups for that too. So I definitely like McLaurin this week as another good, positive, low end wide receiver, mid wide receiver 2, we'll say. Let's go to Denver. Gross. But the Vegas Raiders at the Denver Broncos. Denver's 3-point favorites. It's 36 point total. Max Crosby didn't practice a couple times this week, but he is saying he's going to play. Devontae Adams didn't practice a couple times this week. They are, well, last I have seen, and forgive me for not having on there, with three DMPs now going through Friday. He is out. So my apologies. He's out. Michael Mayer is out. Thayer Munford's out. And then DeCamarion Richardson, a cornerback, is out as well. It's one of those games, guys. Let's be honest. Vegas with Zamir White is out as well. So now you're talking about, do I start Alexander Madison against Denver defense that I would say against the running back groups, Denver as a whole has been like excellent. I mean, they're top 10 against opposing running backs, and I don't trust Alexander Madison. On the flip side of things, talking about Javonte Williams against a Vegas defense that it's been mixed bags. They've given up, the 7th most points to opposing running backs. Christian Wilkins, a healthy Max Crosby, if they can protect Bo Nix, I think that they can try to establish on the ground. I don't absolutely love Javonte just from the low likelihood that there's enough points to go around. But do I think that Javonte is a decent flex option? Sure. In this particular matchup, I think that he's going to see just enough volume that he's going to be, volume-based flex. That's about where I'm at. I mean, he's averaging over half the snaps. It's not a ton of touches, not a ton of yards, but it's enough to be flex, especially in a bye week flex right there. The pass catchers, outside of Brock Bowers for Vegas, without Devontae Adams, sure, can you look at Jacoby Myers? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just don't love the matchup against Denver secondary. Personally, I think that it's going to be really tough against Patrick Surtain. I don't think that even if he mimics what he had last week, which was a target share of over 40%, air yard share of over 50%, first read share 45%, all those positives could still end up in a 5 for 40 yards. And sure, you're getting 9 points in PPR. It's okay for a flex, I guess. But yeah, I don't love that upside. Does that in turn mean Trey Tucker has value? Yes, no. I still can't love it. I mean, Riley Moss isn't exactly a difficult matchup, but I don't love any of the pass catchers, like I said, outside of Brock Bowers. On the Denver side of things, I don't know how we can really be excited of anybody outside of Cortland Sutton. I mean, no pass catchers last week, ran enough routes to be viable. Is Sutton having a good week, good season? No. I mean, he's a wide receiver 4 on the season right now, but he's a wide receiver 4 seeing a target share of 25%, and he's getting the majority of the air yards. He's seeing a huge first read share. He just doesn't have, the quarterback there to support those numbers should be a wide receiver 1 or 2 in any given scenario with any team. Fortunately, he's a wide receiver 4. So if some of those numbers actually come down, like let's say that doesn't get the first read shares and it goes somewhere else, where it would go, don't know. But if those happen, I mean, how much further down does Cortland Sutton go? So I'm going to pretty much just say Sutton is he's a wide receiver 3 flex, wide receiver 2, 3 flex, somewhat depending upon your team's dynamic. I'm happy to say, yeah, you're starting them, but not too many pieces outside of that for either matchup. As far as the IDP sides of things go for Vegas, say if this is a run game for Denver, I don't have a problem with Christian Wilkins. If Max Crosby plays, Max Crosby is definitely going to be in our lineup. The linebackers, if you talk about Robert Spillane without Divine Diablo, totally fine. LB2 right there with LB1 upside. And then secondary, if they had a enough passing volume, I like Nate Hobbs as an option in the slot, but I don't like him in this particular matchup. And so it's kind of an avoid a lot of the overall like defensive components for Vegas. For Denver, the pass rush is tricky because what I see is Nick Benito at times, Jonathan Cooper, who have been, Jonathan Cooper's been fantastic. If you look at like overall volume of play and you want to look at Zach Allen, there's nobody that is on the field more than Zach Allen. Does that translate to fantasy points this week against Vegas? I don't know how much I trust that. Linebacking wise, let me rephrase that. I said Robert Spillane is a potential LB1. I have him in my LB1 conversation for sure. I have him as LB5 this week. So, I skipped past that too quick. I should have made better sense of it. I wanted to let you know that if you were considering not starting Spillane, make sure that you put him into your lineup. There's no doubt about that. And then for the linebacker in Denver, in Cody Barton, man, it has been a wild ride with Cody Barton. We saw with Seattle that he was potentially in a fantastic spot because he was the guy there. And then all of a sudden we realize he's not actually a good football player as far as a true linebacker goes. And it's not a knock against him. It's just the truth. He's back into the, can you start him again because of the volume? Do I love it? No. LB 2 or 3, sure. Volume play linebackers against teams that could stay short to intermediate where he's going to be around quite often. I think there's a stable floor there. And then the next matchup is Arizona at San Francisco. When you're thinking of Arizona as far as a little bit of a disappointment goes, the one thing that I found is that I have a hard time never starting Kyler. I want to say he's a must start because it's Kyler Murray, but if you look outside of week 2, it hasn't been great. It just hasn't been. The rushing upside is, and sure, is he top 5 in rushing yards for quarterbacks? Yeah, but you need more on both sides of that. And has that been a little hit and miss because familiarity with trying to get integrated with Marvin Harrison Jr.? Sure, no. Has it been injuries to Dortch here and there? No, I can't put my finger on it completely. I wish I could, but that tells me that even the question before with James Conner that reaffirms that even more so is that I think they're going to, if they try to win this game, they're going to try to do it on the ground with James Conner if they have from trust, a trust factor. So I trust Jordan Mason in this game. I trust James Conner. I trust George Kittle. I can't trust Trey McBride because of the injury that we were talking about earlier. If you're just tuning in, I saw earlier that Trey McBride had banged up his rib. We'll keep posted on that to find out what that means for our fantasy implications for this week. The Brock Purdy side of things, he's been nothing short of great. Given some volatility with the playing time around him, he's still the QB 14. He's all the passing metrics. He's pretty much top 10, top 5 in so many of them, from the yards per attempt to some of the more defined metrics to like what they call like hero throws and completion percentage over expected. He should be able to find Ayuk. Said earlier that while Ayuk has been a little bit of a disappointment, a lot of a disappointment so far, but there's a ramp up speed. And I think this will be the week that he gets going. I'm always in on Debo. On the other side, Marvin Harrison Jr., I'm going to start. The question is Michael Wilson or Greg Dortch. I don't want to start Dortch myself. I just feel like the 49ers have done a good job against slot receivers. I do like Michael Wilson a little bit more, especially if Trey McBride's out. I think as I say, the 49ers running that single high safety look, the Michael Wilson support has been there. They focused more targets his way, but I think it's a product of them not necessarily abandoning the run, but I think if they do try to stick entirely with Connor, I worry about the true upside of any of the pass catchers in Arizona outside of Marvin Harrison. But Michael Wilson always has intrigued me as in a desperation flex play. Zone Read Fantasy. Good morning. Zay Flowers or Josh Downs in a half-point PPR. So this one, I would want to typically lean Zay just because I think that the actual floor of target value, target percentage will be in his favor. But man, something about that Downs and Flacco combination really stands out to me. And it's like, do I want to shoot upside, or do I want to go with like the safe floor? The safe floor in me says it's Zay Flowers, because it's just like, the target share, like I said, is 24%. He's got enough of the first read shares, but he's averaging less than 40 yards receiving a game. And I think that that's a scary proposition. Whereas Josh Downs, I think 40 yards is almost like, I don't want to say guarantee, but I think that if I'm going to go for the total yardage, especially like in half point where both of them could see a similar target percentage, I'm going to lean Josh Downs in this matchup. It's a good question. I think it's one that we didn't expect to necessarily have week 5 with Zay, but the volume and total yardage just hasn't been there enough for me to feel uber confident that the target share will supersede the actual volume of yardage. So good luck. On the rest of the matchup, as far as Arizona San Francisco goes, like I said, pay attention to Trey McBride. The Fred Warner DNPs, I don't think is something that has impacted his potential for playing time. I'm going to check the practice report right now and just see if there's anything else that came out. So he did limited on Friday, which I think I knew. I think it's likely he's going to play. If I had to guess, I hate to not know right now. And I'm sure that if I jumped on Twitter, I could probably find out 5 different stories 5 different times. But it is impactful, because obviously if Fred Warner doesn't play, you would leave a pretty glaring hole in the middle there, which maybe that means it would be beneficial for Dortch, who has the middle of the middle open to him. But I wouldn't focus too heavily on Fred Warner's health impacting anybody for Arizona more so than just the norm. On the IDP sides of things, though, we know we're going to start Nick Bosa, Fred Warner when healthy. Leonard Floyd's an interesting one. He's had production as far as pressure rate, getting to the quarterback. I think Kyler Murray poses a threat with his ability to get outside the pocket. I think that the secondary for San Francisco, it's not a ton of options that I'm necessarily thrilled to a play this particular week, at least. And then if you look at the Arizona side of things, you have Azeez Al-Shaair. No, you don't. I'm sorry, I take that back. Kazir White, I have as my LB14, and I have issues with the pass rushers in Arizona, because I think that they Jekyll and Hyde sometimes. One week we'll see them somehow with Dennis Gardeck have 7 pressures and a sack, and they'll have collective 4 team sacks. And then the next week they generate 4 pressures as a whole. I didn't trust their pass rush going into the week. I don't necessarily trust it Still, especially against the San Francisco offensive line, I avoid that. Buda Baker, you're going to play. I think that's the IDP side of that. Green Bay travels to LA. Green Bay is 3-point favorites. It's a 48.5-point total. We know the Green Bay situation now with Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson. That obviously has impact for Jordan Love. It probably does impact the other pass catchers on Green Bay quite a bit more than it does anything else, especially against the Los Angeles Rams defense that has been, is generous the right word? I'm going to say yes, because I think that is an absolute given considering. Speaking of that, Jordan Love, I think, especially after last week and even going into that, we know he's going to be in our lineups. Josh Jacobs is going to be in our lineups. Kyron Williams is going to be in the lineups. Matthew Stafford, sure. I don't think that if you can look at the numbers alone and say, all right, am I starting the QB 33 in my weekly matchup? Yes and no. I don't think that's fair. I think that the passing touchdown percentage is bound to regress back to the norm where we should see it. Lack of pass catchers is impacting it, of course, but the yards are there. They're having to change that offense enough that it's fair to expect a little bit of learning curves when you're thrown Demarcus Robinson, Tutu, Whittington, et cetera, into the mix constantly. It's most likely, it's definitely just, it's going to have to be a Kyron Williams game and hope that then the rest of the pass catchers do a supportive role, because they're going to try to keep the ball on the ground and keep the ball out of Green Bay's hands. But with that defense, you can't. That's the tricky part, is I don't think they're going to be able to do so. So Dontavian Wicks has been the most popular name by far. I think we've pretty much, everybody has put Dontavian Wicks as the wide receiver 1 on the week. I say that tongue in cheek, but he was the wide receiver 3 last week. So it's not a crazy thing to project, especially against this Rams secondary. So 24% target share last week. I mean, I had 40% of the air yards. I love Dontavian Wicks. Again, it's not just him. I think Jaden Reed is another one that you could have 2 guys finish in the top 10, top 12. I think we could have 2 wide receiver 1s in Jaden Reed and Dontavian Wicks. And then it brings up Tucker Kraft. And, Tucker Kraft ran, thankfully, we saw this without Luke Musgrave, 84% route share. He had, despite only having a 13% target share, which 13% target share for a tight end is still fine. But on the season, he's a tight end 1. And that's with the total number, the volume is not even being close to being there yet. And with Malik Willis. So Tucker Kraft with Jordan Love, rest of the season, top 8 tight end, I think. I mean, I have him as a middle to lower tight end 1 this week. Let's see where I actually have him, just so I don't say one thing and do the other. He is my tight end 6. So, obviously that says quite a bit, but it says more about the Rams secondary than anything else. On the opposite side for the Rams, we talked about Kyron Williams going to be in our lineups. Which pass catcher do we want from LA? I would say that's probably, if I ask 5 people, I might get 5 different answers. Well, probably not 5, probably 3 different answers. One person will say Jordan Whittington. Last week, finally got a starting role, had significant target share, decent air yard share. Wasn't the first read, but did have an end zone target. Tutu Atwell was 3rd on the team in target, but had the most air yards. And he also has drawn a total of 1 red zone target this season. And then Colby Parkinson, I I can't necessarily recommend Colby Parkinson. I don't even want to recommend Demarcus Robinson anymore because I think we found out what we're going to get, which is just a guy on the field the most, or at least somewhat the most, and not be targeted at a high enough volume. So I missed on that. I thought it would be Demarcus Robinson, who this season, especially with the injuries, would benefit the most. And yeah, I was wrong. So I apologize on that. As far as the IDP sides of things, Green Bay, Rashawn Gary's had a weird season. He has 1 sack. The 1 sack was against Lane Johnson, where there was an apparent whistle that Lane Johnson thought he heard, or an encroachment. And so he stopped. Rashawn Gary got around him. There was no whistle. It was considered a sack, and maybe it shouldn't have been, but maybe it should have been. You play through the whistle as far as I'm concerned. And so, yeah, he against this Rams offensive line, I like Rashawn Gary. I really think he has the matchup to get it going again. He's a defensive line 2 for me. I have him right around defensive DL 16. And I think that's just because of the Rams offensive line. And there's not many other pieces in Green Bay defensive line that I want. As far as the linebackers go, fine with Quay. I'm still debating this. I mean, man, the Troy Reader scenario is challenging because I don't trust Troy Reader as far as being a great linebacker that has that LB1 upside any given week. But he's volume wise, he's an LB2, LB3, like LB29 I have him at right now. And that's okay. If you have that option, that's what you're going to do. I would rather take someone like Trevin Wallace, who I have down, and I've moved Trevin Wallace up into that same range. In fact, actually, I'm going to move Trevin Wallace ahead. Not that I like him that much more, but he's at least got some flashiness that I think there's a little bit of upside as far as that goes. The secondary for Green Bay, I really want Javon Bullard to be a thing. I don't think it's going to happen quite yet, just because we've seen week in and week out a little philosophy change as far as where they want them lined up. I think this will be more than likely a Quentin Lake type game for the Rams as far as secondary, because they have 2, Quentin Lake or Cameron Curl. I mean, I guess you can probably just pick heads or tails. I think both of them are more viable because of Troy Reader, because I don't think anybody's really making tackles in the second level. I think it gets to that third level where Cameron Curl and Quentin Lake are going to be both IDP options you can start. It's crazy enough as it is, but that's where I'm at with that. And so the next game, the Giants at Seattle, the Giants without Malik Neighbors, without Devin Singletary, let's be honest, it's just a disaster. I can't trust Daniel Jones. I feel like Tyrone Tracy's a fine RB2, 3, probably more like RB3 or flex type spot, just from volume standpoint. Which wide receiver do we want? But now that Malik Neighbors is out, I'm fine with Wandale. I think Wandale actually has a decent like wide receiver 3 week. The PPR upside is always there. The yardage and touchdowns might not be there, so we're hoping for 12 targets and 8 catches, something like that. I think that may be high expectations, but I don't think absolutely ridiculous if New York can move the ball at all and keep some sustained drives. That's going to be the key there. On Seattle's side, we're starting Kenneth Walker last week. I mean, man, I can tell you he was on my bench in 1 week. There's no doubt about that, because I didn't trust that he would come in and see immediately what he got. But if you had Kenneth Walker on your bench last week and you'd like to start a support group, let me know. I'm happy to join. I can be the founding father, because it burnt. So not going to make that mistake again. But I don't know if I'm going to make the mistake of not trusting Geno again. He has been nothing short of what we were hoping for. QB8. He's he's doing great in every metric, every advanced pass metric, every metric that says that he's not been overly lucky. He's not out of line with his touchdown percentage. He's got weapons in DK. He's got weapons in JSN. Obviously the target volume has dropped from where we had expected. Like we kind of started to see it trending, obviously with that huge output that he had previously, but still, I still think that JSN is my second option there. Tyler Lockett's not really in my periphery right now when it comes to starting anybody on Seattle. He's the definitive like like flex play when you're in a pinch and you need someone that you're just going to get, 12 to 16% target share on a given week, and you hope that they pass the ball more than they rush. And that's pretty much Tyler Lockett in a nutshell. The only other real true option that bring up is what we're going to do, like we said, with Tyrone Tracy. And I think he sees enough of the volume that he's someone that in a pinch you can feel somewhat comfortable starting. The IDP side, before I get to IDP, Charlene's with us this morning. Charlene, it's just me. So I appreciate you jumping on. And it's not just me. It's me and Scampers and Zone Reed and Ryan and everybody else that's been in the chat, Albert, etc. So I definitely wanted to say hello, good morning. Hopefully last week any of our information was helpful. That is, unless we failed you, but you wouldn't be back if that was the case, and I appreciate you. So Tank Bigsby or Roshan? Gosh, I hate to say it's a coin flip. The only reason I want to say Tank is because I think the likelihood of all true outcomes is that ETN, with a little bit of the shoulder being banged up, could potentially mean that Bigsby grabs or is inherited a larger role. Like, I don't trust anything with Roshan or with the coaching staff after last week, because he's earned an extended look is what they said. And then what happens? He get like the lowest workload he's had, or at least, DeAndre Swift had the best week he's had. And it's that type of just, I call it, I guess, what is that? Bait and switch, which is, I hate that term sometimes being in sales myself, but that's what it felt like. It felt like a bait and switch where they did that and they got us stupid fantasy owners to believe it. But Tank, what was his status for the week as far as practice report? I know he missed 1 week or 1 day. No, he didn't. He had 3 limited, so I'm okay with that. I think Tank has looked better. Like Scamper said earlier. Yeah, let's go with Tank. I think Scampers will agree, and we'll go with that. So good luck. I hope you win, because I think we're playing each other in any situation. We're talking, Charlene, about the Giants in Seattle, IDP sides of things. And yeah, exactly. They're going to do it again, give Herbert 30 touches. That's exactly what they're going to do. And we're all going to it's a stupid thing about fantasy that we think we know anything as far as what's going on through the coach's mind. And it takes one play, one single play that they see something in Roshan that he, breaks 2 tackles for the first down. That's a huge first down to get him into, across the 50 or whatever the scenario may be. And then all of a sudden the trust factor builds, and then the game gets in one scenario or the other. And all of a sudden it's Roshan or Khalil Herbert, and they get the majority. And we all look like, quote unquote dumbasses that people blame everybody for giving their guess, because it truly is. It's a guess. It's an educated guess, but it's a guess nonetheless. And so going back to the IDP side real quick for the Giants, when talking about linebackers, Bobby Okereke is, top 10 option. There, that's pretty easy there for the most part. I have them out just outside of that actually this week. I have them at around 12, and I'm good with that. I think that's safe. There's pardon me one second. Um, there's not many other like Micah McFadden, who was hurt, had come back, and he could vulture a few of those tackles, but I like McFadden. I like McFadden a lot more when it's the pass rush McFadden. That was the true upside of him as an IDP linebacker, was when he can rush the passer. That's the one I like. I like Tyrell Dodson quite a bit as far as the Seattle linebackers go, especially against this Giants team that, I think they may try to force the issue and actually get Daniel Jones. The turnover for Dotson, maybe a forced fumble, which I think I'm just projecting all these stats for Dotson because I like him. So take that for what it's worth. That I just make up what I think is going to happen and try to project that onto all of us, like I think we all do. Yep, we don't know stuff about Frick. I'm keeping this PG in case any young ones are watching. Which, Charlene, it sounds like maybe your youngster was up early again. If you're up with this this early, so I'm thankful for that you're here. Sorry that you have to be up early, like Scampers is up at 6 watching that Minnesota game. Speaking of, someone oh, holy wow, look at that. That's crazy. I was just getting ready to say, would someone tell me what's going on in the game since I don't have it on? Lazard weekly wide receiver. That's what I hate about it, because we know him and Rodgers. Rodgers is, man, he's petty like that. I know it. He will feed Lazard just because they're boys. And I think it's to piss off Garrett Wilson just as much. I know it's not, but it wouldn't shock me. I don't think it'd shock too many people if that was the case. Is that the only score of the game? Is it just 7-0 right now, or are there a couple field goals? You guys, I need you. Come on. I don't have it turned on here and going into a little bit of shock, but pass rushing for this game, it's going to come at a premium. I think I'm not the biggest like Kayvon Thibodeau necessarily. I do like Dexter Lawrence. I think Dexter Lawrence, especially if he continues what he's done so far in the season, he's had plenty of good pressures. He just a mountain of a man, and very easily can wrap up 4 to 5 tackles just on Kenneth Walker rushing alone. Speaking of Kenneth Walker, I don't think anybody's going to do anything with Zach Charbonnet, but I wanted to mention his name just in case. That Charbonnet now, I think, is clearly, when Kenneth Walker's healthy, is a nothing. On the Seattle side, you look at a person like Derek Hall, and while I think the Giants pose a threat for opposing pass rushers to actually have value, outside of, if Boye Mafe, that would be the only name I would even recommend if I could, but I can't. So, well, I don't think so. I don't trust Mafe's knee necessarily. I think maybe let's see, any more updates on Mafe. He got limited practices. Monitor Boye Mafe's knee, because I don't like starting with the knee, but still, when healthy, he's been an absolute stud. 17-7 Minnesota. Okay, all right. Scampers, that doesn't help. I need to know how they scored. I mean, this is important. 2 picks targeted. See, that's the problem too, is you start hyper focusing on them, and eventually, yeah, perfect. That's exactly what we said. For people that weren't listening earlier, for the first game, that's what me and Scampers predicted. We said it's going to be a pick 6 for Van Ginkel, and then CJ Ham is going to vulture a touchdown out of Aaron Jones. So we're 1 for 1. Scampers, congratulations, are 2 for 2. I think that's pretty much telling and par for the course. The next game is Dallas at Pittsburgh. This is a Sunday night game. Brandon Cooks is out. Micah Parsons most likely is out. Alex Highsmith's out. Cordell Patterson's out. Jalen Warren's out. Yowzers. There's a lot to take in with that. First and foremost is we know we're going to start CeeDee Lamb. I mean, I think that's about the only no doubter. I'm getting really close to saying Justin Fields is in that same conversation. He's done exactly what we had expected is, leave the Bears, go to the Steelers, make Bears fans regret trading and then drafting Caleb Williams. That's exactly right. To be honest, though, that is what I think some of us had that conversation is if you could go back and I'll ask you guys, do you think that the Bears would have been better off right now if they had kept Fields, maybe tried to implement an offense similar to Arthur Smith's where it's predicated on the play action and run, used the first picks, could have traded back down a little bit, had gotten someone like Neighbors or even waited and took a Dunze, took someone like Joe Alt with the second or third pick, depending upon where they traded down, probably picked up another first next year. They wouldn't need to worry about salary cap because they would have addressed another position that they would have for the full 5 years in Joe Alt that they wouldn't have to pay left or right tackle, depending upon where they were going to put them. Would they be any different right now? And I wonder if they kept Fields, if they would have went out and spent the money on Keenan Allen, and if they would have just been able to then use some of those picks, maybe in another pick and taken another wide receiver. Maybe they would have taken Neighbors and a Dunze. I don't know. I still have my thoughts, which is I think that they would be in the same spot, if not better, if they had done that, and maybe better prime for the future with pieces like Joe Alt and pieces across the offensive line. But you didn't come here for hypotheticals and scenarios that don't matter. What does matter is, will George Pickens be a wide receiver 1 or 2 this week? And I love the matchup personally. I think that you've got a beat up Dallas secondary. You've got George Pickens, who theoretically should be a wide receiver 1 or 2, if not for all the penalty draw comebacks or the number of just opportunities that have been taken from him. And you look at the Dallas secondary, like I said, banged up. I don't think there's too many other pass catchers in Pittsburgh that I really worry about. And I think if they do anything, they're going to try to focus on slowing down Najee, who I like. I like Najee in the start. I think it's a volume play. I think he's a flex RB2 for me, just because like I said, I think the Dallas defense focuses on slowing him down, and that's where they've been better at defensively, is actually slowing down the run. And look at that. Hey, Dave, good morning.
What's going on?
Oh, nothing. Just getting ready to wrap up the week and talk. We're on Dallas and Pittsburgh right now, and let's see.
Dallas and Pittsburgh, eh?
Dallas and Pittsburgh.
So Brandon Cooks is out, right?
He is out. He's out. Micah Parsons is looking good. Cordell Patterson is out. Jalen Warren is out. So Najee, from a volume standpoint, I was saying I don't love his upside, but I love his volume RB2 flex, just kind of floor that he has, right?
You can't not start him as an RB2. The fact of the matter is you probably picked him up in the 6th, 7th round. So, you've probably got a decent RB1, RB2 anyway. So maybe he's your RB2, maybe he's your flex. But look, volume alone, you're getting 15 touches out of him. You can't bench a 15-touch guy. It's as simple as that. So you're starting Najee Harris. Are you excited about it? No. but you're starting him.
Yeah, and that's okay. I mean, I think that's a common misconception is that we want to be excited about starting the player. It's like, hey, do I start Najee Harris or, well, here, like this, Dallas missed on Jonathan Brooks, but everyone missed on Braylon Allen. That's a very true statement.
Yeah.
People are going to ask that question. Oh, should I start, Najee Harris or Braylon Allen? Because the Braylon Allen excitement, no one's really asking that question. I don't think so. But that's the type of player that people do have unnecessary decisions they have to make. Oh, should I start Braylon Allen or Najee? Well, the answer is Najee almost 99% of the time, but they want something fun. Nobody wants boring. They want that exciting. Yep, I was right.
No, yeah, you can't start Braylon Allen because, look, the fact of the matter is he may get 3 carries for 10 yards. You cannot have that, when you've got a guy like Najee on your bench. So you're starting him. Look, he's probably going to get 70 to 90 yards. Maybe he gets a goal line carry in the end zone, but, that's okay. That's okay for an RB2 or flex. But, sometimes fantasy football is not sexy. Sometimes it's ugly, right? It's just about the gritty, getting the points that you need, and sometimes it's getting 12 points out of your RB2.
It's true. Unless you're watching this show right now, which in turn, fantasy football is definitely sexy. Not ugly at all. Not ugly at all. What is ugly is what you just talked about. The rushing game for the Jets right now, currently, Breece Hall and Braylon Allen have combined for 7 attempts for 12 yards. But Garrett Wilson, man, like we said, Garrett Wilson.
This is what I'm saying, man. I can't trust this Jets offense. I cannot start him because it relies on which side of the bed that Aaron Rodgers gets out of. I mean, I'm sorry, but there is no excuse for Aaron Rodgers to not beat the Broncos or not at least be in a competitive game where he throws for 300 yards and a couple of touchdowns. No excuse. I understand they have Patrick Surtain, but that's the kind of offense you're dealing with. And the Jets right now, for me, even if I have Garrett Wilson, I'm waiting for one big game. If Garrett Wilson has a big game today, I'm doing everything I can to trade him. Get rid of Garrett Wilson because he's just unreliable. You cannot have unreliability on your roster. You need consistency.
He's had nine targets in the first half, and it's turned into 6 points, 7 points.
Yeah, but so is Amari Cooper. I mean, Amari
Cooper's no doubt.
And I'm benching Amari Cooper in a bunch of leagues. So the only reason you're starting Garrett Wilson is probably because you picked him up in the late first round, early second, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
But look, wait. Garrett Wilson, will he have a big game? Of course he will. He's Garrett Wilson, right? Wait for that game. Do everything you can to trade him away.
Yeah, that's the interesting part. What will it take to get value? Will it be one big game, or do you need 2 big games? And can you get 2 big games in a row? And I was not contradicting and going against that. I'm saying, yeah, he's target volume is there, and he still can't put up points. I mean, you get
don't do that to your psyche. Don't do that to your psyche because then you get 2 big games and you start wondering, do I keep him? Is this the start of something big? So don't do that. You've got to make the trade and you move, all right? Make the trade, move on, It's like people who sold Bitcoin when it was $500. It happened, move on with life, all right?
Yeah.
Find the next big thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you missed out on billions. Got it. Actually, no, not really. I never believed in it. And should I have? Maybe. I don't care. I have not lost. I've lost more sleep on not starting Kenneth Walker last week than I did off missing out on hundreds of millions of dollars of Bitcoin. That's just where my mind takes me.
I hate being that guy, but I told you so. I did tell you so. I was big on Kenneth Walker last week, and he absolutely delivered. He's just one of those guys who, when he's healthy, they give him the rock. He's good. Yeah. So Charbonnet's okay. That's the thing. Look, if Charbonnet absolutely delivered in his absence, I would say, all right, we've got a real scary situation. But no, it's the Kenneth Walker show. Seahawks offense. I mean, I don't know what's going on with, there's something to the water in Seattle, right? It's
Ryan Grubbs, that new offense that I think that we saw pieces of it, or we saw the whole thing at Washington. And I think that after week 1, everybody was quick to go, and I think that was unsubstantiated. But yeah, it went way into that. And so, but keep this in mind, the running backs I started over Kenneth Walker were Alvin Kamara, Saquon, and James Conner.
Fair enough.
So all three of them were fine. I didn't like, I wanted to start. Like, I went back and forth literally. And the crazy thing is, of all of them, like, I couldn't not play Saquon. I hated the matchup against Tampa Bay, but it wasn't just wasn't gonna happen. And I would,
if Saquon's healthy, you play Saquon.
Of course, exactly. I tell people, I hear that cute all the time. Don't get cute. Exactly. Oh, I should have played blah blah blah. And grub over Shane Waldron all day, every day.
I had a game where if I put not last week, the week before, if I put DeAndre Hopkins over Mike Evans, I would have won. But I'm like, look, I'm not living in a world where you play DeAndre Hopkins over Mike Evans. It is what it is. You play the best players you got. If I lose with Saquon on my starting lineup, I can live with it.
Exactly.
You know, if I put in Braylon Allen, over Saquon and I lose, that's regret time.
Absolutely. No, and I think that's the way I'm comfortable with that. It's when you get to, the harder decisions where you just have to you overanalyze sometimes by looking at this, sometimes I even go as far as looking at some of those. Oh, this receiver against single high safety matchups has been targeted less than this one against too high. And I think that we overanalyze way too much sometimes. It gets a little challenging.
Well, it's tough for you guys because you guys are IDP guys. So it's easy for you to go real deep into what receiver is up against what cornerback and what their stats are, right? So because you have that. Whereas, for people who aren't as, I guess, in tune with the intense IDP, no, it's not nerdy at all. It's cool. But I'm just saying, when you can really go down a rabbit hole as far as what cornerback is matching up against the number one wide receiver and go, oh, maybe I'll start, I don't know, Noah Brown over, who knows, like, Justin Jefferson or something like that because he's got a bad matchup. But
right, exactly. But you see it, you hear it. It's out there. People way, which is it crazy to think that some people do that just so that it's not even to win their matchup. It's to be able to say, look what I did. And is that, I think that's in our nature, which I hate to even assume that, but there's plenty of people. Is it in your nature, Dave, to drop Zeke Elliott at this point because Rico Dowdle is the RB1?
I literally was about to ask you the question of what are you doing with Ezekiel Elliott? Because you know as much as anyone, he is my guy. He's the guy that I always draft in every single league since 2015. I just don't know. And I've had that same dilemma this week where I went to pick up guys like Alexander Madison, and I'm looking at it going, I just can't do it. Because here's the thing. If anything happens to Rico Dowdle, Zeke is going to be their guy. He's going to be their high touch guy. The thing is, though, if you look at his stats, he's been efficient. He hasn't played poorly, right? He scored once or twice. He's averaging 4 point something yards a carry. I forget his exact stats. So you look at that, you're like, okay, he's playing good. He's catching passes out of the backfield. So it's really tough to drop a guy who's being efficient. The trouble is, while Rico Dowdle is there, I don't think he's going to get the volume. So you're really relying on a big play from Zeke, and I just don't know Zeke has enough juice in the tank to break off for an 80-yard touchdown like he used to.
His efficiency, unfortunately, too, a lot of that was supported by the first 2 weeks, where if you look at his last 2 games, he hasn't played more than like 17% of the snaps, and he's averaging 5 touches for a total of 18 yards. So yes, weeks 1 and 2, he was very, like, to the point where I was not disappointed that I didn't have him, but I didn't trust that maybe he still has a little bit. It's just the last 2 weeks that has me worried. And I think that's the only reason why you would even contemplate dropping him. If it was hey, he's just splitting the snaps with Rico Dowdle. Sure, that sucks, but you hold him because if something happens to Dowdle or he gets the goal line carries, there's still value. There's nobody on your teams that's getting, 19% of the snaps that you're keeping on your team unless they're a backup that is waiting to take over someone's role if there's injury or something like that.
He can't be in your starting lineup, and it pains me to say, but he can't be in your starting lineup. But I'm okay with him on your bench. If you have the depth on your bench, I'm okay with him on your bench. Because if something happens to Rico, you've got a very good RB2. But right now, he's not startable, unfortunately. Because the thing is, running backs, as we've seen, it doesn't matter if you're a top tier guy or if you're just a Braylon Allen or something trying to get more carries. They need volume. A running back needs at least 10 touches a game to get in the rhythm. You're not getting anything out of a guy who gets 5 carries. It's just not happening. And if you do, it's pure luck.
Yeah, no, and that's exactly right. And I don't want to bank on luck, even though that's how a lot of it is. This is not going to be lucky. I'm going to get this one first. Rachel, will get to yours in 1 second. Trey Sermon or Kareem Hunt? I know I'm leaning Kareem Hunt, and it's not just because the fact that I'm a Chiefs fan. It's how he was used in that offense last week really surprised me. I was worried that there was conversation we had about Kareem Hunt's value because he wouldn't be used in the red zone. He wouldn't get those high value touches. And he was used on one specific play that it told me a lot. And it was one of those design Mahomes shotgun on the 3-yard line where he did a little flip to Kareem Hunt that he wouldn't do that if he wasn't acclimated with the offense. And that tells me that he has gotten the trust of Andy Reid and Mahomes, et cetera, to be involved in that offense. I like Sermon because of the volume, but I think that we're going to see, I think that Hunt will do more with similar volume this week. What do you think on that?
Look, out of those two, I'm going Sermon, and I know it sounds like a broken record, but it's a volume thing. Joe Flacco, is Joe Flacco starting today, or is it Richardson?
Yep.
Yeah, it's Joe Flacco. He's a pocket quarterback, and he likes to hand off the ball. He's not a running quarterback like Anthony Richardson. They're going to pound the rock, especially if they got the lead. He's going to get the high touches. So I like Sermon purely for that. Hunt, to me, is, he's the kind of guy I wouldn't be shocked if he went for $180 and 3 touchdowns, right? He's still got enough juice in the tank. It's the Chiefs offense. It's, probably the most high power offense in the league. I get it. But there's also 2 other backs there that are getting touches. So you just don't know if they play a hot hand approach. If for some reason Carson Steele decides he's going to be efficient this week, maybe Hunt takes a back seat. All I know is Trey Sermon is getting the touches. So I want to go with that formula. But as far as a pure talent, it's Hunt over Sermon. But what I have to do as far as opportunity, it's Trey Sermon.
And I 100% get that. I mean that it definitely makes sense. And I think that obviously jelly of the month, unfortunately, you have to lean which one of those directions. And in a full point PPR, that helps me with the Hunt side just a little bit. But man, it's not surprising. The good news is this: Clyde Edwards-Helaire is not playing this week, so we don't have to worry about a fourth, person in that mix. If CEH was playing, I might lean Sermon just because of the uncertainty of touches for Kareem Hunt. Dave, here's an IDP question for you. You got to choose 2 of these. I know. It's okay. You'll do it. We'll walk through this together.
I'm scared.
It's okay. Dennis Gardeck,
he's
a pass rusher for the Arizona Cardinals against the San Francisco 49ers offensive line. That's probably not good. Even though Dennis Gardeck has had some value, I touched on him just a second ago, and I just don't love it. I'm a little down on Dennis Gardeck against San Francisco, that is, because the matchup is difficult. Trayvon Walker is a pass rusher.
I do know Trayvon Walker.
Okay, for Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jaguars take on the aforementioned Indianapolis Colts, whose offensive line is not the greatest in the world. Not bad, but I mean the tackles, the interior offensive line for Indy is better than the tackles as far as pressures allowed. So Trayvon Walker is one option there. And then Christian Roseboom is a linebacker for the Los Angeles Rams, who is more of an off-ball linebacker. Not my I don't have the snap share, but I think he's efficient with snaps. He just doesn't, like last week he's had back-to-back 10 tackle games, which is great. That's all he does. He doesn't really supply anything else. He's more 50-50, which is the solo to assist. So you want more solo to assists, but him being 50-50 is there. And then Monteric Brown.
That's where you get the half sacks, right? The assists?
The assist tackles. So
Okay.
he is so it's like instead of the solo tackles like being worth 1.5 points, an assist is worth like a half. So if you get like 9 solos and 1 assist, excuse me, he just doesn't get the sell. But tackle volume is easier to predict than a sack. And then Monteric Brown is a cornerback. Now, Rachel, I have to ask you this, and this because it's important. Is it a format that the cornerbacks are benefited more? I still don't love Monteric Brown. Just simply put, anytime I start a corner, it is like it's just tough. I don't like starting corners in that. That being said, I'm starting Trayvon Walker and Christian Roseboom. But let me check one thing real quick. Since the matchup there between Monteric and most likely it's going to be against Alec Pierce out wide. I don't trust the target volume going his way as much as I would start. So yeah, I'm going to go with those two. Dave, how's that? How do you feel IDP now? You feel like you're ready to jump into a league? You're going to start Trayvon Walker and Christian Roseboom based off. That's what I think about with every stupid thing is I have to look at, all right, offense. What are they going to play against? Who are they going to go against? What is the matchup? What's the likelihood that Indianapolis targets in this case, it would be the right side corner. So you would target whoever's on your left side. In this case, it would be Alec Pierce. Well, I don't think Flacco throws to Pierce nearly as much as, he does Pittman and Josh Downs. So that's why I thought that.
Well, it's interesting because my first year playing IDP, I just assumed that, superstars, you play them. I think my first year playing, I picked up Stephon Gilmore, and I thought it was great. Yeah. I remember even talking to you, you're like, yeah, but he's a corner. And at that time, the Patriots were really good. So they're not going to throw to him a lot. So he's probably not going to get volume. I'm like, I didn't even think of that. So it's funny, the IDP world, because you got to really think opposite. You kind of want guys on bad teams, right? Where the defense is going to be on there a lot of the time. And guys who are good enough to get, or bad enough to get thrown at, but good enough to stop it. It's a real tricky formula. It really is. Other than offense, which is like, hey, I want, the number one running back, Christian McCaffrey or whatever, you're like, obviously you take that guy. But IDP, you've got to find, I find it's like finding the sweet spot, You can't be too good. You can't be too bad. You got to be right in the middle. It's Goldilocks,
That's
not
exactly
too hot,
what
not too cold.
Right. And it sucks because no one wants it's like, do you want chicken tenders every time you go to a restaurant? No, but they're going to be safe. That you're going to not be disappointed. Nobody wants that. And that's where you're exactly right. You want pass rushers, number one, that are good, but then 2 that are on teams that will be good because they'll get ahead and they'll have more pass rush opportunities because the opposing team will be passing the ball more than running with a lead. You want linebackers that are going to face, just give up enough, like just allow enough third downs so that they stay on the field more because volume is king and they want the most tackles. And you want secondary that's going to be, like you said, just bad enough they're going to target them, but good enough tacklers that they tackle them when they do get targeted and they stay just close enough. Like they can't get their hand on the ball, or sometimes they do. Who was the one? Deron Bland. Fine corner, but obviously, yeah, IDP is like Pizza Hut. That's exact. Not the old Pizza Hut either. Like not when we were younger, where it was actually, you got served. They serve pizza to 10-year-olds in 5,000 degree.
$3.99 for an all you can eat buffet,
yeah.
salad bar. It was fantastic.
We
staying there for like 3 hours.
Oh man, we had Mortal Kombat and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles that the guys would meet up, and I was, probably like 12, 13, meet up there, and for $5 you could have the day of days that never ended. It was wonderful. But
our parents used to just drop it. This is back in the day where you could do this. Like our parents used to just drop us off for like 2-3 hours and say, "I'll see you in 3 hours." But
yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
Your parents, granted, maybe this is telling of my childhood, which I don't regret in the least, but we could go as a family, and guess what? The parents, couple pitchers of beer sitting around. You had that like the light that came down over every table. That what do they call that? Like in the church, it has the painted glass, stained glass.
Yes, yeah. I was just
stained glass light
for that. Oh, that's awesome.
You sat there and downing some beer, and you're going back to the buffet to get pizza and play some video games. Times were simpler back then.
Oh man, that was good. As if anyone can't tell, we're old.
We're old. No, sorry. We'll quit. That was as you missed.
We're giving
earlier.
back in my day speeches. Yeah. We're at that stage, Nate. We're back to my day, people.
So we Scampers and I had Scampers. I didn't come up with anything, he did, but we have a new phrase, and that would be my Pizza Hut back when I was 10. That time, the nostalgia is my drip tonight. So it's the opposite of kryptonite, something that is positive. He said the kids now would say, if you're hip, that whereas kryptonite is your weakness, drip tonight is what gives you strength. Isn't that cool term? No, you don't get it.
Ooh, sorry, connection. Drips not.
Drip tonight. Yep.
Dude, I'm trying to keep up with all the terminology. I just found out last night. Apparently, saying something is Ohio is crap. Did you know that?
What? No.
Yeah. Apparently now that's a thing.
Man.
People say, "Oh, that's Ohio." I'm like, "Holy crap!" I feel bad for anyone who lives in Cleveland, right? But that's a thing now. I can't keep up with the lingo, man.
Why is that? Because like the Springfield, Ohio, them eating
I've
cats?
Got no idea. I got no idea. I can't keep up, dude. But
we need to chat.
That's a thing now.
Well, I can tell you, Scott. Sam Darnold today has been Ohio for sure. If you know what I'm saying, 5 point so far. I unfortunately I was worried. I didn't think it would be this bad. The Jets defense is tough. It was going to be, if Sauce was going to be on Jefferson, which that's the only thing I really want to watch this game is to see that matchup there. But let's wrap up this week with a tidy bow, Dave. We're going to go Monday night. It is the Chiefs and Saints. The Chiefs are 5.5 point home favorites, 42.5 point total, which is kind of a low point total for those two offenses. But then again, it's not shocking because, those two offenses can have some disappearing acts. But I don't know.
Let's hope that Mahomes doesn't try and take out his number one receiver again. We'll see.
A bold strategy.
He's trying to give himself a challenge. He's like, you know what? I can do it with the number two.
I can do it. Well, supposedly, while they wait for the tests of Rashid Rice's
he's done,
knee,
dude. He's done. There's no way. There's no way he's coming back. Even in the worst case or best case, he's coming back in 6 weeks. You cannot survive in fantasy football waiting 6 weeks for a guy like Rashid Rice. You've got to, unless you've got a crazy deep league, decent IR spots, you probably got to drop him, right? I mean, that's it. Just let's start with that. What are you doing with Rashid Rice? Are you benching him? Or are you dropping him?
I have not dropped him yet. So the answer to your question is I'm holding with the hope that it's a bone bruise. I don't believe that's the case, but in previous instances, when it's taken this long to get a definitive answer, it's been a 50-50 split. So usually a scope, when they go in and do a scope to determine the severity of the ACL, it's because the swelling was too much and they didn't see it on the MRI. Sometimes, well, half the times that I've seen, at least in the documented cases, that's how they found the tear of the ACL, and they went in. And the other times they went in, they found it was a bone bruise with ligament strain, and it was still, it was still a 6-week recovery. But the positive of anything, and this goes without saying, is that at this point we know that it's not a devastating ACL, MCL, PCL, meniscus, all full-blown tear, a la Nick Chubb or anything to that extent. That's the positive. Do I feel comfortable keeping him on my bench? If you had like 6 bench spots and with bye weeks coming up, he's really been close. Luckily, I had like one extra person. Like I dropped like my extra tight end that I might have had. I think I dropped Tyler Conklin in one, or I might have even dropped, which is crazy. I think I dropped Njoku in one instead of Rashee Rice, which was stupid in reality. But I don't know. Here, let's talk about Kansas City, New Orleans, because I want to hear your opinion on this on New Orleans offense.
Okay.
Outside of Alvin Kamara, which we know is a must start, how comfortable? Where are we at with Derek Carr? I mean, we've seen through the first like 3-4 weeks, he was elite, and now he's dropped to the QB 16 after back-to-back less than 10 fantasy point weeks.
The trouble is they really employ Taysom Hill a lot.
He's out.
He's out? Okay.
Yep.
Well, this week, maybe you can play Derek Carr, but generally speaking, that's my concern as far as having Derek Carr as your starter. Can you start him this week? Probably. I do like Rashid Shaheed, if that's his name. Chris Olave is really tough to decipher, to be honest with you. But look, he likes to air the ball out. There's a few old timers there who like to throw the ball. Kirk Cousins, Flacco, Derek Carr is one of them, to be honest. The handful of guys in the league who sit in the pocket and throw the ball. So I like that about Derek Carr. You're probably getting 200 and something yards out of him, 1 or 2 touchdowns. His ceiling is not that high. That's the trouble. So what are you looking for out of your quarterback? Are you looking for like a Kirk Cousins type performance the other day? If that's what you're looking for, if that's what you need, Derek Carr is not your guy. He's not the guy who's going to go 509 touchdowns and 509 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Actually, that'd be pretty cool. 509 touchdowns in one game, right?
It would be
impressive. I think it'd be a record. But nonetheless, I think he's just a safe play. I don't think he's getting you 3 points and he's going to bust like Aaron Rodgers today. But I don't think he's getting you 350 yards and 3 touchdowns. So he's just safe.
I worry about I think the Chiefs pass rush could give him some fits, but maybe that'll pay off for Olave and Kamara. That's the one I think, the number of check down passes to Kamara should hopefully. He was banged up. He had, had a hip injury and a ribbish injury from the massive workload. They need to be able to get Kamara, safe touches in space where he can effectively avoid some of the big hits. But I think Olave is their one that will be decently targeted. But the hard part is the matchup. The matchup against the Chiefs secondary is always a difficult one because Trent McDuffie is most likely going to line up with Chris Olave in some over the majority.
I still get mad that the Patriots could have drafted him and instead they trade with the Chiefs. I don't know if you remember that. It's going back a couple of years ago. They trade they trade with the Chiefs and they pick up McDuffie, the guy that I was hoping they would pick up. But
he was very highly talked about around here because he was a Washington product, and the Chiefs have done good with drafting Washington corners over the years, and so that's that was the optimism. And then he's been between him and then, when they had him and Snead, it was a great combination. He supports to allow players like Chamari Connor and Jalen Watson, sorry, to be effective corners. It's crazy how Spags has done that. Yeah, and that's true. Taysom is a serious problem for defense.
It's
without
true.
him.
Man, Taysom Hill's good, man. He can throw the ball. He can run the ball. I mean, I hate using the name, but he really is like a Swiss Army knife. He can do everything, and he's very efficient at it. He's the kind of dude who, if he ran for 80 yards for a touchdown, wouldn't be shocked, right? So
No.
he is someone very difficult for defenses to account for. So taking that away, I think you're right. I think it makes it tougher for Derek Carr because they know he's going to sit in the pocket.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's going to be a lot more blitzes. I really do.
Yeah, they already create the third most pressures the Chiefs do in the NFL, and over the past couple weeks, Derek Brown at Fantasy Pros points out that Derek Carr has, what is it, the second or third most? Over the last 2 weeks, Carr has the fifth fastest time to pressure. So that offensive line is showing some weaknesses that we knew going into the season they were going to have. Ryan Ramczyk went out. Their offensive line was going into the season. PFF's like 28th, 29th, 30th. So most people had them ranked really, really low. And can they get it back together? Sure. I think that's where this Clint Kubiak offense was designed to make sure that they kept Carr upright. And he was scheming a lot.
Is that in relation to the other Kubiak?
Yeah, that's his. I think Clint is his. Is Clint his son? But yeah, Gary Kubiak is.
Yes, I was going to say Gary. I was like, is it Gary?
It is. Yep.
Okay.
It is. Yeah, it's Gary Kubiak's son. That's what I thought it was. I want to make sure it wasn't one of those nephews.
Random.
Seems like his son. Yeah. On the Chiefs side of the ball, we talked about Kareem Hunt. Intriguing to see. Like, I'm a fan of Hunt this week, and I understand if people aren't as much because of the uncertainty of his touches. But I think that even last week, so use last week as an example, he played less than half of the snaps. So there's the concern that, Dave, you have. But what he did with those, in half the snaps, he had 16 touches and 85 yards. So even with limited touches, he was useful. I won't say he's going to be an RB1, anything crazy like that, but I think I put Kareem Hunt just around the same as I have with Najee, because I think that even though Najee will get the volume, he will do less with it. I think Hunt will do more with the limited volume. It's the pass catchers that I don't know exactly what to do with, because it's, man, some
when
rough
does
streets,
Hollywood
brother.
Brown come? When does Hollywood Brown come back?
He's not. He's season ending IR.
It's season ending. Okay, I was hopeful he could come back sometime later in the year, but
so I mean, it's Travis Kelce and Xavier Worthy with maybe a sprinkling of Juju, but none of those guys out. I mean, I'm only going to touch.
We're going to say it. We got to be concerned about the Chiefs. I understand their record is 4-0. I understand they have the best record in the NFL with a couple of other people, but can they survive a season with Xavier Worthy as their number one receiver? No. I don't know. That's tough calling. And let's be honest, Travis Kelce has been far from impressive this year. I mean, he's finally hit the stage where, dude, I mean, he's older than Gronk, who retired, 2 years ago, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, he ain't no spring chicken, right? And I think we're finally seeing the tail end of it. But this is probably Kelce's last season. Do they try and incorporate another tight end in there? I don't know. But let's be honest, they only just beat the Chargers last week. It was not by a ton. It was one touchdown, I believe. Chargers had their number for probably 2/3 of that game. So, I don't know. Worthy needs to show me he can be that number one guy today. Oh, not today. Sorry, on Monday. I need to be able to see it because right now he's a speedster. He's quick. There's no doubt about it. But can he be elite? Can he go against number one cornerbacks and do everything in the route tree? I don't know. That I need to see.
I don't know that answer either. I know that there's a lot of conversation happening around Kansas City and surrounding areas that they have said that while they wait for Rashee Rice's indicators to come back, that they will explore the trade routes. And I think that there's 3 or 4, maybe 5 names out there, players that people are, number one, are they petitioning, trying to hope into existence? Or if there's smoke, there's fire. The first one was Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill's name came up because obviously without Tua and with them losing Jalen Phillips and being near the bottom of the AFC East, would that give them reason? I don't know how
they
much.
They got to go for Devontae Adams. They have to.
I don't know.
It makes sense.
It makes sense, but I don't think the Raiders are willing to trade him interdivisionally. I think that's what has been the holdup from what I've heard, because his name has been bounced, of course, because why wouldn't it be? But it's not one of the most telling names, shockingly, because I think that interdivisional. Tyreek was one. Amari Cooper was another name. Let's see, who was the other
Tyreek
one?
makes sense, but didn't they just extend him not even a couple of months ago? Tyreek, I'm fairly certain they restructured his contract. Not even, it was like a month before the season started.
I'm bad with keeping track of the contracts. I will admit that is one of my faults. Is I used to, and I love the.
Let me check.
So all I know is that his contract, I mean, back in 22, his contract still runs through 2026. I mean, it's a lot of money, of course, but nothing changing. Maybe they move some money around as far as like contract, like guaranteed money, but as of right now, it's still the same.
Gotcha.
Same thing. So yeah, it voids in 27. I mean, it's a $30 million hit or $15 million dead cap.
Man, they're bringing back the old band together. Kareem Hunt, Tyreek Hill.
I know. Exactly.
All you need is like Darnell Robinson. Is that his name? I always forget his name.
We could bring DeMarcus Robinson.
DeMarcus Robinson.
Yeah.
Bring back Chris Conley. Get the old band back together, man.
Maybe Dwayne Bowe's still out there somewhere, just hanging out. Hey, if they can bring back, if they bring back a legit wide receiver one, I think that player's value. Hear me out on this, because I will say I think that the immediate response is if it's Tyreek, that's one thing. But let's say they bring in someone like Amari Cooper. Say Cleveland allows him to
I'm
move.
okay with that. That's pretty good.
I love it, but I also will say I do believe that there's a chance that if Amari Cooper gets traded, his trade value in fantasy is so high that I think you could actually get so much in return, because I think the thought is that he's immediately going to come in and just be a stud. But I worry. I mean, I don't worry about the Chiefs.
So many leagues, Amari Cooper, that would be, my libido is just gone through the roof thinking about that right now. Amari Cooper.
Okay, we'll get off that topic. I don't want that to distract us from anything, but I just don't know. Yeah. Oh, I don't get awkward. I don't even care. I just don't know any other teams that have a situation and a receiver that they would ultimately move. I mean, like
Chiefs have to pay. The Chiefs have to pay. At the end of the day, everyone knows they're hurt. Everyone knows that Xavier Worthy is not the guy. So whoever goes to the Chiefs, you're probably giving up a first, if we're being honest. So are you guys okay with it? Here's the thing. Realistically, you guys are probably, you're either winning the Super Bowl or you're pretty damn close to it, right?
Yeah. So it's 29, 30, 31 pick, 32.
Exactly. Is that too much to give up for a number one guy? I don't think so. If you guys were giving up a 1 or 2 or 3 next year, maybe, but you're 4-0, and realistically, Xavier Worthy's not taking you to the Holy Land, right? So you need a number one guy. You need a guy early in the season so they can get acclimated to the offense. You can't get a guy, you're not getting some Odell Beckham who's going to do nothing for the offense, right? You need
Right.
someone who can make an impact. It's week 5. Obviously, that whoever they pick up is not playing this week. But if they pick up someone early enough next week, maybe they get warmed up next week. In week 6, they get a few reps. Week 7, they're full strength. I'm okay with that. So you have 10 weeks of them before you hit playoffs, getting acclimated to the offense, to Patrick Mahomes. They got to pull the plug right now. Giving up a late first is not that crazy. So I think it's just one of those things that the Chiefs, let's be honest, man, that the run's going to end sometime soon. It's like anything, right? I mean, look at the Patriots, it's the music has to stop at some stage, right? And you got Kelsey, who's in the tail end. The offense is okay. You got to get that playmaker. You got to give Patrick Mahomes that number one guy, and that's what Tyreek Hill did, right? Like the 2018 AFC Championship, and I'm going back. Tyreek Hill only caught, I think, 3 catches, right? And you guys only just lost that game. But what it did is open up the offense for absolutely everyone else. That was the game who's that running back you guys used to have? It's testing me right now. He scored 4 touchdowns.
Oh, in 2018?
2018. You guys just lost against the Patriots in overtime.
I remember the game. It was oh my God, I hate whenever I don't know the Chiefs trivia. That
you and I are probably going to text each other in like 10 minutes, but when we find out. but
I'll tell you the name that comes to mind also is was it Darrell Williams?
Yes, Darrell Williams. He scored 4 touchdowns that
game. Or Damian Williams, one of the two.
Good question. No, not Darrell. Yeah, you're right. Damian
Williams was, because ironically you say that, we were in Vegas for the Super Bowl, I guess the following year, and I made a bet on first touchdown scored or anytime touchdown, and I bet on D Williams, and I picked the wrong one, and I didn't know I picked the other one, which I think I picked Darrell Williams and it was Damian Williams or vice versa, and took my ticket up to get my money, and they're like, you didn't win. I said, yeah, like right. They're like, nope, different one, and I was like, motherfucker. So yeah. Well, here, let's wrap up this game, Dave, because we have basically, let's see, about 9 minutes left, and so Kelsey, you touched on, which made sense. Yes, last week was a very good revival of things. I did want to mention the other name too that is increasingly interesting to me. I don't know how much I love the idea of giving up like a first. I don't think we'd have to do that, but DeAndre Hopkins is somebody that they were actively pursuing before he signed with the Titans.
I'm okay with that. That's okay. I mean, Hopkins is still quality enough that I think he can do it. Yeah, I think he's what Odell Beckham was for the Rams 3 years ago. I think that was Odell's final year of being really elite. I think Hopkins is there. And if you give him a guy like Mahomes, I think Hopkins can compete. That's a decent trade. That's a trade I can live with. But look, here's the thing. You touched on him. Juju. Are you picking up Juju Smith-Schuster in any leagues?
Yes. So in the Kings Classic leagues, for instance, the leagues that we draft in at the Expo, at the Hall of Fame, there are 14 team leagues with 3 flex spots. Juju is rostered and started in those leagues, especially with the bye weeks. Do I like it in regular? Not a chance. Do I think that he is the most likely number 2 or 3 target on the team this weekend? Yes.
He may even be number 1. I mean, look, he might be. If anyone's still listening right now, I mean, I think he might be someone. If you got bench spot, just let him sit there. I'm not saying start him, but just let him sit there. He may go for 9 catches for 100 yards and a touchdown. I don't know. I mean, it's not crazy. He spent 2 years in KC.
The familiarity is there. There's no doubt about that. And like you said, Worthy's not a high target guy. He's a
speedster. He's a throw it up there and hope he catches it, like he did last week. If you look at Xavier Worthy's numbers last week, it was overinflated by that huge catch and run. Not catch and run. It was a huge bomb by Mahomes. 70-yard touchdown, something like that.
That's been his whole season.
I know. We're not meant to do it, but you take that away, and he doesn't. You're not happy with Xavier Worthy, right? So, So I don't know. I mean, Juju might be that guy. He's a good slot receiver. He's really good at those little, dink and dunk, hook routes, what have you, to get 6-7 yards. He's the kind of guy who can also, go against the number one corner. He's not bad, man. He's not a bad receiver. So I wouldn't be surprised if Juju has a decent. Yeah, if he had a big night, I'm not shocked.
I think I could make that same type of case, unfortunately, for about 2 or 3 other guys. I could probably make that same compelling case for Justin Watson, who has that familiarity.
He's had his opportunity, man. I mean, Justin Watson's had the chance. Yeah, he's never going to be a 1. He's not. He's not.
And I don't think that. I don't know if you want to be a 1 in Kansas City, if you need to be a 1 in Kansas City's offense to have that one game upside. I think that's what's been, creative about that offense is I don't know enough about each week, or I know enough. I don't want to try to guess every single week of who outside of Rashee Rice, which we knew. Then it's just a matter of Mahomes having that first read target in Kansas City outside with Rashee Rice gone, I think is going to be 20% across the board for every receiver. And it's going to be so misleading and deceiving and difficult. But the IDP side of things, real quick, before we run out of here, that George Karlaftis, Chris Jones, talked about the pressure rate New Orleans has allowed.
Is Chris Jones okay? Because I saw him get carted off the field last week.
Yeah, Chris Jones is fine.
Okay.
Yep. Chris Jones is fine. Karlaftis is there. Nick Bolton's the one that is not concerns me, but I worry because he left the game twice last week with the back injury, came back both times, came back to even make the game-winning tackle. And so do I trust Nick Bolton? 100%. Do I trust that back is not 100%? Yes, 100% on that too. And then in the secondary, maybe Justin Reed is up at the line of scrimmage. Tramari Connor is a slot corner that we like because in Spag's offense, don't want to start the corners just because, like we talked about earlier, Trent McDuffie, Stephon Gilmore, not going to get targeted enough. And the likely, nickel and or corner blitz that they do once, you just have to get the sack out of it as a result, and that's too much to risk. The New Orleans side, man, Carl Granderson pass rush. The Chiefs' offensive line is kind of difficult to see sometimes because they allow too much pressure that I'm not comfortable with. Mahomes does a great job of evading the pressure, but Carl Granderson, I think, is still a pretty solid DL1. Given that
Stephon Gilmore, he's not playing for the Chiefs, is he?
No, you said Stephon Gilmore earlier about the first person.
Oh, okay. I thought you were implying he's on the Chiefs. I'm like, did I miss
God,
something?
no.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
I won't say thankfully because he's still decent player. But
he's on the Vikings still, right?
I think so.
Okay,
I think that's where he's at. New Orleans linebackers really, no Demario Davis. So what you find is that you have pretty much, I don't want to say nobody against the Rams or the Chiefs. I mean, because they don't necessarily give up a ton to opposing linebackers, but that's kind of where I'm at. Because actually, hold on, maybe Demario Davis is. I don't know. He just left practice. It's not updated right now. He wasn't on my initial sheet, and so if you find something about that, if you're really worried about Demario Davis at linebacker for your team, he's been fantastic. It's just with Pete Werner had a hamstring, was limited on Saturday. Demario Davis got a full practice in. So Demario Davis, there you go. I apologize for the stammering and back and forth, Dave. I sometimes don't know what I'm talking about, and these injury updates change daily. And then with this being a Monday night game, it's shame on me for not having that updated prior. I have failed everybody. Secondary. This is
your last week. This is the last week you'll see Nate Markham, guys. He's obviously failed us.
I had a run. I was doing solo for a minute. It was a lot of fun talking to myself and trying to bullshit my way through these weeks. But New Orleans has some corners. So Alante Taylor, Paulson Adebo. This is Tyrann Mathieu revenge game again against the Chiefs. I like Tyrann Mathieu to play a pretty important role for New Orleans. They kind of, he knows the offense decently well. He'll try to be positioned to take full advantage. But that wraps up week 5, Dave. I know that we need to get rolling here. I don't want to cut you off or anything like that, but how are your leagues doing this year? You doing all right?
I'm doing average. I'm 2-2 in a bunch, so could be better, could be worse. Had one of those weeks last week where I lost by 0.85.
Yeah,
I'm okay with losing by 100 points. If I get crushed, I'm like, you know what? Doesn't matter. It is what it is. I tip my hat to you. Losing by something where you can just trade one player and win, that hurts. But yeah, I'm doing okay, but it's still early. And that's the one thing I would say, if anyone's still listening out there, do not panic. Don't go dropping players unnecessarily or what have you. It's not panic time, even if you're 0-4. Do you need the win this week? Probably. But there's been a lot of 0-4 teams, even 0-5 teams, who've came back and won. You just got to make playoffs. Just focus on one win at a time. You know, if you're 0-4, just get the 1-4, get to 2-4, and then just try and eke your way. Before you know it, you know, you're 7-5. So,
Yep.
But yeah, what about yourself?
So far, so good. I have enough leagues that when I'm 0-4, I still pay attention to. I don't ever give up on. But so one reason I like not having just one league is 0-4 in one league, it just devastates the whole year. At least you can, not that I would just chuck it out the window, but my Vegas league that I drafted, the NFFC Primetime, that one is I'm doing well so far. I have some issues with like Tyreek and Achan are on my team and not looking great, but I'm first in that division right now, and I'm I think 35th overall out of about I think it's 1,200 people. So yeah, that's the one I want to win the most, of course, because financially, finishing first overall in the overall competition pays you $250,000. So,
holy crap! Okay,
yeah, but that's overall out of 1,200 people. It's the likelihood of winning. Like the person who I'm playing this week, they won the overall like last year or 2 years ago, and so they've had a taste of that. And luckily, Darnell Mooney on Thursday night is on my team, and he was one drop pass away from eclipsing about 40 fantasy points. So I'm happy with the start. I won't get too much more on, but yeah, as a whole, it's great. Which is why I'm going to wrap this up now, because of all those leagues, I got to make sure that I don't make a stupid mistake and leave someone out, so I don't lose by 0.85. And so, if you followed us today and paid attention, I appreciate you joining me along for the ride. No one likes to road trip by themselves, and so it was nice before I picked up this hitchhiker halfway, 3/4 of the way through my stop. He didn't murder me, and maybe propositioned, but I declined. No gas, no grass, no ass. Get out of my car is what my dad used to always say. That was the saying back in the day. But I will be on X pretty much the day. If you need anything, at Nate Markham. Dave's at Connect Go if you need anything from Dave, or his cell phone number is 31. I'm just kidding. Of course, if you haven't done any underdog bets for the day, if you go over to Underdog and use the promo code FRAMES for your first deposit, they will match 100% up to, I believe, $1,000. So if you haven't used Underdog, it is incredible. Use all the wisdom that we learned today, make some money, and we will see you next week. Actually, we'll see you Wednesday night for the 1,000 different shows. Take care.